Ash, Adam, Stephen, and Seth assisted in transporting the ladies from the house to the marquee tent. As Arya stepped out of the car, she immediately noticed a few differences from their last visit. Beyond the music filtering through the chilly air, a new decorative touch had been added. An intricate wreath framing the entrance, woven with red roses, orchids, and bursts of peonies and tulips, their bright hues adding a playful contrast to the deeper tones. Clusters of hydrangeas and sprigs of baby's breath softened the arrangement, lending an air of both elegance and celebration. The hum of excitement filled the cold outdoor space as the ladies spilled out of the cars, their chatter blending with the rhythmic beat of the music. "Thank you, Ash," Arya said as she moved away from the car and headed toward the entrance with Anita and Anna flanking her. Inside, they spotted the team Andrew had helped them hire gathered in one corner of the room, clapping and cheering them on. Arya chuckled as Anita and Anna began dancing to the cheers. Somewhere in the marquee tent, someone turned up the music, and soon everyone joined in, clapping and cheering along. "This may not be an honor walk, but I sure feel like a celebrity right now," Anita quipped. "What are you talking about? Did you see that entrance?" "I feel way more than a celebrity," Anna chimed in, making everyone laugh. A woman dressed in a white top and matching pants, with a white mask covering her face, stepped forward. Clearing her throat, she signaled for the clapping and cheering to stop. A warm smile spread across her face as she first directed her gaze toward Ariana, then shifted it to Anna, Anita, and the rest of the ladies. "I'm Sophia," she introduced herself, her voice soft and calming. "I'll be overseeing your spa experience today." She paused briefly before continuing. "We've prepared a luxurious treatment for each of you. You'll begin with a full-body massage, followed by a rejuvenating soak in the jacuzzi. Afterward, you can relax on plush Arabian floor cushions, where a selection of refreshments will be waiting. To enhance your experience, each of you will have 2 of my team members attending to you," Sophia added. "They will guide you to your private enclosure, where you can fully immerse yourselves in the experience." With that, she turned and gestured to the massage therapists, who stepped forward gracefully. Each therapist approached one of the ladies, offering a polite nod before leading them toward a paneled enclosure. Anita looked back at Arya and giggled. "Thank you," she mouthed to her. Arya nodded in acknowledgement and whispered, "You're most welcome." Once inside the enclosure, Anita noticed the space was far more inviting than before. The massage table was now draped in soft linens, the jacuzzi bubbled warmly, and the cozy floor seating was arranged around a table laden with an assortment of fresh fruit, cheese platters, stuffed grape leaves, hummus with warm pita bread, and delicate pastries. Instead of alcohol, there were carafes of fruit-infused water, freshly squeezed juices, and herbal teas. Anita couldn't help but giggle quietly to herself. She looked back as one of the therapists closed the door behind her. She felt a tad isolated and thought to herself that it wasn't as much fun if she couldn't gossip with Arya. "Give me a second," Anita said, holding up a finger as she rushed to open the door. As she did, the door opposite hers opened too, and Anna called out, "I can't gossip all the way here, Ariana." Anita burst into laughter. "Okay, maybe we need a different approach," Arya said as she stepped out of her own cubicle. Before long, all the massage tables were moved into the open center space and the ladies lay down on their tables with contented sighs. "Better?" Arya called out. "Very," Anita replied. "Just the way it should be," Anna added. "Can we stay like this forever?" Evangeline chimed in as the therapist began kneading her back. Laughter echoed through the expansive space. As the massage therapists worked their way across each of the ladies, the soothing rhythm of their hands helped to ease any tension in their muscles. For most, it was an instant relief, but Jaden felt a bit out of place. She wasn't one to enjoy being touched by strangers, and the unfamiliar sensation of the therapist's hands on her body made her stiffen at first. However, after a few minutes of gentle kneading and practiced breathing on her side, she began to relax, thinking the pressure was just firm enough to feel soothing, but not too intense to become unbearable. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, gradually letting go of her discomfort as she allowed the therapist to work on the knots in her shoulders. By the time the session was over, she was surprised to find that she had actually enjoyed it. The ladies were each guided to their own private cubicle, where the warm, bubbling jacuzzi awaited. The soothing blend of music, complemented by the calming scents of essential oils and delicious aromas of food, created the perfect atmosphere for relaxation. The women settled into the tubs, and upon discovering that each enclosed space was soundproof, they left their doors open so they could still call out to each other and keep the conversation going. "Ah, this is heavenly," Anna sighed, letting her body sink into the warm water. "I think I could fall asleep in here," she said loud enough for others to hear. "I'm pretty sure I'll be snoring before long," Anita replied, her voice light and playful, as she leaned back against the edge of her tub and started making a snoring sound. "Yup, something like this," she quipped, mimicking the sound. "Sss, sss." Across the room, Jaden couldn't help but chuckle as she sank into the water. "Okay, I'll admit it. I thought the massage was going to be weird, but now I'm a convert," she said. "See? Told you so," Aria teased from her own jacuzzi, leaning against the edge. "Nothing to be scared of," she added with a contented sigh. Evangeline, already chatting away from her cubicle, chimed in, "I think we should do this every weekend. This is like a dream come true," she called out happily. "Every weekend, Dr. Hart." Anna laughed. Evangeline groaned, understanding the playful jab. She was a doctor. When would she ever have the time for spa treatments every weekend? Plus, she was expecting a baby. "Boss, can we do this for bonding sometimes?" Claire called out. Aria giggled from her cubicle. "Good idea, Dr. Sterling," she replied. "Once a quarter sounds about right. We'll need to keep the spa staff on speed dial for that." "Quarterly?" Cassandra gasped in mock horror. "See how she smoothly slips that in?" Dr. Yen chimed in. Aria burst into laughter as they all joined in, teasing her playfully. Soon enough, the light banter and laughter quieted as the women relaxed into the peaceful comfort of the jacuzzis, each savoring the calm moment. Jaden, no longer feeling tense, smiled and joined in the light-hearted conversation. The gentle sound of the warm water and soft chatter blended together, creating a sense of camaraderie and relaxation. Then her mind drifted to the morning before when she had accidentally walked in on Justin while he was in the bathroom, wearing only his boxers. She couldn't tell who was more embarrassed, her or him. He was still experiencing the typical morning situation, and the bulge was quite evident. Jaden had been mortified, unsure whether her shock came from the unexpected sight of him in that state, or from the surprise that someone with such an athletic frame could have such a, presence. Later, when her brain finally resumed functioning, she noted his height and shoe size and thought maybe it shouldn't have been such a surprise. But the thing was, she had looked, and he had caught her looking. Remembering it now, her skin grew hot, and she lowered herself completely into the soapy water, hoping to hide the flush spreading across her face. "Okay, who's got the best spa day story?" Anita asked, raising her voice so the others could hear. "Easy," Anna replied. "I've been to spas before, but this one takes the cake. Can't beat the company either." The women giggled. After about 4 hours of pampering, the music stopped, and the sound of Sophia's voice echoed through the space. "The spa experience has come to an end, ladies," she announced. A collective groan filled the expansive room. Evangeline, who had fallen asleep, stirred awake, a content smile spreading across her lips. She felt utterly pampered. "Now, let's move to the next stage. Getting ready for the party," Sophia continued in a soft, warm tone. In each enclosure, the ladies were gently ushered out of the jacuzzis and handed fluffy white bathrobes, which they all eagerly put on. The massage therapists led them to a tall lounge area in front of mirrors, where another set of women awaited to help with the next step of the experience, grooming. The ladies settled into plush chairs, and the grooming began. One therapist carefully trimmed Aria's eyebrows. Another worked on filing her nails, shaping them into neat ovals before applying a clear coat of polish. A third attendant moved to Aria's feet, gently soaking them in warm water before exfoliating and massaging them with soothing lotions. Aria let out a soft, contented sigh as she relaxed into the pampering, her eyes closing for a brief moment, letting herself fully enjoy the experience. The same process was repeated for each of the women, with gentle hands tending to their brows, nails, and feet. The sound of the soft music and quiet chatter filled the air as the ladies were pampered one by one. Noria's nails were polished with a soft pink hue, while Anita's eyebrows were perfectly shaped, and Anna's feet were given a gentle massage, making her giggle with delight. The grooming continued for what felt like hours, with the ladies all quietly enjoying the attention. In Aria's cubicle, the sound of a feminine voice calling her name made her open her eyes. She blinked and smiled at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked radiant, with her eyebrows and lashes neatly groomed and her nails polished. But it was the gold-wrapped dress hanging on one side of the rack that caught her attention. Her heart raced at the thought of Nathaniel joining them, seeing her in the alluring gold dress, her face carefully made up, and her skin soft and smooth from the exotic oils. "Ready?" one of the attendants asked, holding up the dress with a gentle smile. Aria nodded, feeling the flutter of excitement in her chest. She allowed the attendants to help her up, lifting the soft robe off her shoulders and slipping into the dress, which hugged her curves just right. The transformation was complete. As Aria stepped outside, she watched the ladies begin to emerge from various enclosures, all looking radiant and stunning. She couldn't help but gasp when she saw her aunt, who appeared no older than 30. Miss Bella, with her streak of white hair, resembled an Adonis. Aria, overjoyed, did a happy dance that had everyone laughing. She thought everyone looked absolutely beautiful. Anita catwalked toward Anna, pulling her forward, so the two of them continued toward the center stage and up the few steps framing it. The others cheered and clapped as the two women took a bow at the center stage. The microphone descended from the ceiling and the karaoke screen appeared. After choosing a song, a loud drum roll echoed through the space, and the beat began. The voices of the two women filled the room, and others began clapping and dancing along. In your eyes I found my place, a tender smile, a soft embrace. Every moment, time stands still. With you, my heart is always filled. Together, love, we'll climb the hill to the very peak. The two sang, dancing and circling around each other. When the song ended, they picked a country song and sang that as well. Afterward, they came down from the stage and another set of ladies went up. Laughter and clapping filled the expansive space as the fun continued. Then, as if on cue, just when the ladies were finishing the karaoke and no one was on stage, all the lights suddenly went off, causing the ladies to freeze in place. "Is it time?" Anna squealed with delight. They could hear fast shuffling of feet, then silence. The lights came back on and the ladies gasped when they saw the men on stage dressed in camo pants and white round-neck fitted shirts. "Oh my God!" the ladies squealed, unable to contain their excitement. Aria stared, mouth agape. The vast arena echoed with a deep, husky voice announcing, "Welcome to this episode of What the Ladies Ordered." A pause followed, punctuated by the brief, electrifying strum of an electric guitar. Then the voice continued, "And what they got." A slow, soulful string melody hummed in the background as the voice declared, "Ladies, let me introduce you to..." The voice trailed off just as the circular top panel of the stage began to rotate. Around its edge, men stood motionless, each clad in nothing but dark leather masks, black vest over loose camo cargo pants. Their powerful sculpted chests were outlined, their skin glistening under the dim, flickering lights. With their heads thrown back, they let out a synchronized howl, fists clenched at their sides. The ladies erupted into a wild chorus of exhilaration, cheers, gasps, and delighted shrieks blending into a chaotic symphony of excitement. "Dear Lord," Miss Everly gasped as her eyes landed on Sheriff Logan among the performers, then burst into laughter. "Oh my God, these are our men!" Anna exclaimed, her excitement tinged with disbelief. But once it fully registered, she started jumping, cheering, and whistling. "Whoa, yes, let's go, boys," she hollered. "I can't believe Aiden would do this." Noria laughed, pressing her hands to her face as if to contain her shock. "You are speaking of Aiden? Charles is there." Claire responded with a mix of shock and delight. "That's my man!" Anita shouted, who was the first to realize that the dancers were the Hawthorne men. She wasted no time dancing along with the music, hyping them up with cheers. "Somebody call 911 'cause this is fire." Eva's wide eyes darted frantically across the stage, scanning the performers. When she finally spotted a familiar figure, she broke into giggles. "Oh my God!" she sputtered between laughter, her cheeks heating with a mix of shyness and pride as she recognized Jake. Isla covered her face, only daring to peek through the gaps between her fingers as her eyes locked onto the man she was certain was Ethan. She couldn't stop laughing, her stomach quaking from amusement. Jaden, however, wanted nothing more than to disappear. A flood of chaotic emotions overwhelmed her as her eyes landed on Justin Graham. She glanced, then quickly averted her gaze, her eyes darting everywhere but the stage. Yet despite herself, she kept sneaking glances at him, completely thrown off by how someone who usually seemed so clueless and innocent had ended up in this madness. Then it hit her. He was friends with Ethan Blackwood. That explained everything. A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Finally giving in, she abandoned her reluctance, joined the chaos, and cupped her hands around her mouth. "Woo! Woo! Work it, boys!" she called out, followed by a loud, shameless whistle. Then, as if on cue, the men leaned back in unison, their upper bodies arching with hypnotic control. A deep, rhythmic bass dropped, sending vibrations through the entire venue as the music swelled with an intoxicating beat. Their movements began slowly, hips rolling in smooth, sinuous waves, undulating to the music like a perfectly synchronized tide. "Lord have mercy," Yen cheered. "Yes," she cried out, her laughter bubbling over. "I suddenly believe in miracles," she added between laughs. Arya's mouth hung open still. The performance was mesmerizing, an artful display of raw power, control, and seduction. Then, without warning, the men executed a seamless flip, landing low on the stage in a crouch. With fluid precision, they transitioned into body rolls, their defined muscles flexing and rippling as they moved in a deliberate, sensual rhythm. "Hot damn! Oh, I need a fan! Somebody help me!" Juliet exclaimed, laughing as she fanned herself dramatically. "Oh, somebody's been practicing!" Anna cheered, unable to contain her laughter. "Go, Alex! Woo!" As the men rose, their choreography shifted. A mix of Magic Mike-inspired moves designed to tease and enthrall. They prowled forward, executing slow grinds, thrusts, and smooth, effortless transitions between intricate floor work and commanding upright stances. Some mimicked lassoing an imaginary partner, rolling their hips as they pulled the invisible rope in close, while others performed the signature slow body drag, running their hands down their own torsos before sinking into deep, controlled thrusts. "Damn! Yes! That's what I'm talking about," Cassandra called out, her voice rising above the noise as she clapped and cheered. "That's right! Own that stage, baby!" Claire joined in. Yen burst into giggles. "I don't know whether to cheer or pray," she said almost to herself as she watched Will. "Drop it low, baby!" Noria shouted, causing the women around her to erupt into laughter. Who knew the sheriff had moves? "What?" Anita teased, her grin widening as Ms. Everly dropped to her knees, laughing uncontrollably. Arya's gaze locked onto one of the masked men. While the disguises were crafted to make them indistinguishable, the masks, the slicked-back hair, the sleeveless black shirts, she knew exactly which one was Nathaniel. The way he moved, the specific roll of his hips, the familiar dips and isolations, she recognized them instantly. These were movements he had used on her before. Her face flushed. A possessive twinge ran through her, the thrill of watching him mixed with the frustration of knowing she wasn't the only one witnessing this display. A soft chuckle escaped her as it hit her. Nathaniel must have felt the same way, picturing her giving attention to some random guy when it should only ever be his. That possessive, cunning, devilish, beautiful man, she mused to herself. "God, I love him," she whispered, her eyes never leaving him. He was the most powerfully masculine, sensual, and flawlessly built man she had ever seen. Oh, he's definitely going to make me pay for this tonight, and I can't wait. Damn, he looks hot, she thought, stifling a giggle. On stage, the men executed a synchronized body wave, dropping low before thrusting forward with a calculated, tantalizing roll of their hips. They mimicked cupping and lifting imaginary patrons, teasing the air as they ground in slow, deliberate motions, deep, intoxicating, and utterly captivating. The ladies erupted into giggles, some covering their faces, their cheeks flushing with heat. Dawn's eyes were solely on Anton. She couldn't quite believe that he had kept this from her. She thought he looked completely delicious. Hawthorne men, y'all did not come to play. Anita hyped them up, her energy contagious. Somebody's been hiding their real talents, she added, making the ladies laugh even harder. I will never recover from this, Cassandra gasped between fits of laughter. Booty for days, Anton, Dawn cheered, laughing. The performance was a masterclass in seduction, sensual, commanding and utterly enthralling. When the dance ended and the men began jumping down from the stage, the women gasped in awe. Their shock quickly turned into excited squeals as the men advanced toward them. A few women instinctively backed away, their chests rising and falling with excitement and anticipation. Miss Everly, however, wasted no time. The moment Sheriff Logan got close enough, she reached up, cupped his masked face, and kissed him without hesitation. Anita and Aria erupted into cheers. Get it, Auntie, they hollered, laughing. As Alex approached Anna, she reached for his hand, her eyes warm with affection. Without hesitation, she led him into her private enclosure. The door had barely shut before she lunged at him, making him break character with a quiet chuckle. She pressed her mouth to his, her kiss eager and claiming. Gosh, you look hot, baby, she murmured in a low, sultry tone. So are you, my love, Alex replied, lifting her into his arms as she kissed him with unrestrained passion. Outside, Anita didn't wait for Andrew to reach her. She hurried toward him, and he lifted her up effortlessly. Wrapping her arms around his neck, she smoothed back his hair and whispered, Oh, I'm going to teach you the consequences of your foreplay, Sir MacLeod. Andrew shook with laughter. Noria ran to Aidan, leaping into his arms. He caught her midair in a powerful move. She cupped his jaw and pressed her lips to his, not caring that people were watching. Aidan, having already survived her catcall earlier without breaking character, whispered, You are a wild one, aren't you? Noria giggled, planting kisses all over his face as he cupped her shapely back and carried her into her private enclosure. Now you're gonna get it, he teased, making her giggle uncontrollably. Jaden saw Justin hesitate at the foot of the stage, so she crossed the space between them. Well, that was something, Mr. Graham. I never would have imagined you. Justin didn't let her finish. Ethan had teased him relentlessly about getting too confident, thinking he could land Jaden after being a doormat for Pamela for so many years. For once, he wanted to prove he had a backbone and could go after what he wanted. Placing a finger over her lips, he held her gaze through his mask. He took her wrist gently, guiding her toward her private enclosure. He almost lost his courage when she arched a daring brow at him, but Justin knew if he backed off now, he would never have the chance again. He closed the space between them, locking eyes as he slowly cupped her perfectly symmetrical face. He stroked her lips with his thumbs, listening to her breathing quicken. He paused, giving her the opportunity to say no, to stop him, to push him away, but she didn't. He kissed her then, his eyes wide open, still locked with hers. The kiss was hesitant, slow, as Justin took his time. Jaden, feeling every inch of her body aching for more, surged forward and deepened the kiss. She closed her eyes, savoring the feel of his lips against hers. Justin let out a relieved sigh and kissed her back with more confidence, not holding back. His kiss grew more intense, building a dam of need and hunger in Jaden as he moved his hands to her neck, stroking it gently. His hand wandered down to the soft swell of her chest. Justin, Jaden whispered, pleasure and painful need washing over her. I want more, Jaden, please, he murmured. Jaden paused, breaking their kiss to trail her lips down his body. She lowered herself to his pectorals, letting her tongue flick over his sensitive, beaded buds before continuing down his surprisingly chiseled abs and then to the V of his pelvis. Soon enough, his cargo pants were down around his ankles. Jaden, you don't have to, he began, but his words faltered as she moved lower, his body trembling. Holy, he murmured in a voice thick with pleasure, barely audible. "Jaden, please, please, stop," he begged a minute later, overwhelmed by pure pleasure. He grabbed her by the shoulders, making her stand up. Driven by the storm of emotions inside him, he turned her around, positioning her to face away from him. He guided her back against his chest, both of them leaning over the massage table as he began to soothe her aching need. "Justin," Jaden murmured, her breath shaky. Justin responded by planting kisses along her neck and shoulders, nibbling on her skin as he whispered her name over and over. Meanwhile, outside, Nathaniel approached Arya, who had her eyes fixed on him. "Would you care for a massage redo, Mom?" he asked in a low, husky voice. Arya smiled up at him, biting the corner of her lower lip. "I don't know, sir. I'm a married woman. Only one man is allowed to touch me," she replied, her voice low and seductive. "This man is a lucky one," Nathaniel said, his voice low and suggestive. "Perhaps I could introduce you to him," Arya teased, looping a finger through one of his belt loops. She drew him closer, standing on her toes to press a kiss to his jawline before pulling him to follow her. Nathaniel's gaze fell on the sway of her well-rounded hips as she moved, and he felt his body respond. "Damn it, stay in character," he quietly admonished himself. Inside the enclosure, Arya dropped Nathaniel's hand, fully aware that he was in character. Determined to make him squirm, she moved away from him, swaying her hips as she kept her back to him. Slowly, she unclipped her wrap dress, shrugging it off her shoulders and letting it fall down her body as she continued to move, knowing the glow of the dim light would make her skin shimmer. She stopped near the Arabian dinner setting, picking up a wrap draped over one of the floor cushions. Bending over, she gave him a view before loosely covering her chest in a false gesture of modesty, glancing back at him, knowing he could see her chest through the sheer fabric. "Perhaps discussing him while we continue the massage might make the experience more appropriate," she said, her lashes fluttering. Nathaniel felt a rush of conflicting emotions. He could sense the swell of primal need to close the distance and end the charade, but he had planned to make this memorable for both of them and make her beg for him. He knew the last part was wishful thinking. Certain he would be the one to snap first, but he was determined to try. "As you wish, madam," he replied in a soft, husky tone. Arya bit a piece of fabric and lowered herself onto the rug. "How do you want me?" she asked, lying down, facing up and slowly parting her legs. Bloody witch, Nathaniel thought, fighting both a laugh and the intense hunger surging through him. In one swift motion, he removed his vest, kept the mask on and loosened the band of his cargo pants. He strode to the massage table, grabbed essential oil, and returned to kneel beside Arya. He poured a small amount of oil onto her flat stomach, setting the bottle beside her sprawled body, before pressing an open palm to her skin, working the oil into her soft, supple flesh. He tried to ignore the sharp intake of her breath, but his body betrayed him, hardening for her. Despite it all, he was still determined to make an effort. Arya's breathing grew shallow and quick. His hands on her body felt like a furnace, neither too hot nor too cool, creating a burning need between her legs that caused her to part them further as his hands continued their descent. Just when she thought he would claim her, he picked up the oil again, flipped her over and poured it onto the hollow of her back. He worked the oil up her back, kneading the muscles. When the massage therapist had done this, it had loosened the tension in her shoulders, relieving her stress. But Nathaniel's touch had a different effect. It sparked an intense ache in the pit of her stomach, making her moan at the feel of his hands on her. "What was it you said about your husband?" Nathaniel teased, his voice low and smooth, adding to the aching need building within her. "Yes, my husband," Arya murmured, her voice low and breathy as Nathaniel moved to the curve of her back, kneading and massaging her slowly, working down to the back of her legs. "Ooh," she murmured, "my husband, he is, being a terrible one right now," Arya said, struggling to keep her composure with what he was doing to her. Nathaniel shook with quiet laughter. "You don't say. Please, explain," he invited, gently stroking her inner thighs but avoiding the apex, then moving lower to her instep. Taking her small foot in his hands, he massaged it gently. He promised to love and cherish me for one, but I'm not feeling the love right now, baby, she said. Ah, I'm sure he meant no harm. Just a slave, as we all are to the desires of our women, Nathaniel replied, then lowered his face to give her a gentle bite on her lush backside. Arya trembled as a rush of heat coursed through her very core. Nathan, his name escaped her lips, her body spasming with hunger and need. Nathaniel settled between her legs, continuing to knead her supple skin but adding soft, feathery kisses. He slowly gripped her thighs and pulled her closer, snuggling against her. Arya couldn't stop shaking with longing and anticipation. When he hesitated, despite the fact that she could feel his pulsating need, she said, "Oh, my love, you're begging to be murdered right now." Nathaniel shook with laughter, unable to hold back any longer. As she made to move, his grip tightened around her and he slowly completed her, letting her feel every inch of him. Arya cried out his name, even though she remembered that they weren't the only ones there. But she trusted her husband's foresight to anticipate this very moment and make sure they truly had a private one. She screamed in ecstasy as the rush flooded her mind, the weight intensifying the experience. Her pleasure-filled scream echoed in Nathaniel's head, and the rush of emotion combined with the explosion of pleasure made him lose control. He gave in completely, pulling her tighter as her continuous calls for him drove him deeper into the pool of ecstasy she was pulling him into. Her warmth, her sleekness, drove him to the edge of sanity. He leaned over, cupping her throat, making her crane her neck to receive his kiss. He felt something wet against her cheeks, unsure whether it was his tears or hers. He felt lost in her love. "Ariana," he murmured, his voice carrying all his emotions, his love, his gut-wrenching need, his desire, and his insatiable hunger. "I love you," she replied just as intensely. Nathaniel held on long enough to shudder with release alongside her. Their bodies quivered with an onslaught of emotions. After a few minutes of having tamed their desires, Nathaniel broke the silence. "Let's talk about how you planned to hire strippers, shall we, my love?" Arya burst into giggles, knowing the time for punishment had arrived, and she was ready for it. She sat up, straddling him, and cooed, "Punish me, Zadie, I've been a bad, bad girl." Nathaniel knew she meant it as a joke, but the primal need stirring inside him didn't quite tickle his funny bone. Arya must have seen the change in his eyes because her smile faded and her breath quickened. "Damn it, he's going to give me more babies," she thought. "Baby, I can explain," she started to say, but then he maneuvered her over, tackling her, so her back was pressed to the rug, his body hovering over her with a darkened gaze. "Holy," Arya thought to herself. "Can you now?" he replied. "It's Anita, she's to blame. And Anna, yes, Anna too," Arya quickly said, knowing she was throwing her best friends under the bus, but figured they could handle Nathaniel. "Really?" came Nathaniel's husky reply. "Uh-huh," she responded with wide-eyed innocence. "All right, let's clean you up first, and then you can tell me all about it," he said. Arya was certain that was a threat. He got up, then lifted her over his shoulder and headed toward the jacuzzi. "Help me!" Arya mock-cried, extending her hand out toward the door. Nathaniel gently smacked her bare bum. Meanwhile, outside, Jake, who was one of the Hawthorne guards, jumped down from the stage alongside Nathaniel Hawthorne. Andrew, Ethan, Alex, Charles, and Anton approached Evangeline with an easy stride, his lips curving into a lopsided grin as he closed the distance between them. "I was told you might need a private massage, madam," he recited the rehearsed line, watching as Evangeline covered her face, giggling. He tried not to laugh himself, thinking of how irresistibly attractive she looked. She was wearing a clinging sequined dress, one shoulder bare, exposing her delicate skin along with the swell of her full chest. From the outline, he could tell she wasn't wearing anything underneath, and the sight sent his pulse racing as heat surged through his body. Jake had been one of the men who initially thought the entire charade was unnecessary. They could have just crashed the ladies' party and claimed their partners, but seeing how excited the women had been, the effort was undeniably worth it. He was glad Nathaniel had insisted they go along with the absurdity. Nathaniel had orchestrated it all just to bring a smile to his wife's face, and now Jake found himself admiring him. realizing he was a man worth looking up to for guidance on how to be a great partner. It was clear to him now, as it was to all the other men, the cheers and enthusiasm of the women had made everything worthwhile. When Evangeline finally dropped her hands from her face and leaned into him, gazing up at him with warmth in her eyes, he murmured, "You enjoyed that, didn't you?" His voice was deep and husky. Ava nodded, her cheeks heating up, her luminous eyes gleaming with affection. She placed her hand on his firm stomach, her breathing quickening. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms, carrying her bridal style as she wrapped her arms around his neck, drawing his face close to hers. He carried her to her private enclosure, only setting her down when they reached the massage table. As her feet touched the ground, she took his hand and guided it through the opening of her bodice, pressing his palm against her soft curves while she strained upward to kiss him again. Her other hand found his waistband, unzipping his fly and urging him to step out of his cargo pants. Her kisses grew more insistent, her breath coming in quick, uneven pants. Jake's chest quivered at her fervent touch. "Eva," he whispered. She deepened the pressure of her caresses. "Damn, maybe we need to do this more often because what?" Jake thought, stunned by the intensity of her desire. It was far more than she had ever been with him. It was as if the dam of her self-control had snapped open, and she was letting the flood of emotion truly overwhelm her. "Tell me what you want," he rasped, his voice unsteady as she drove him to the edge. "Tell me," he repeated, the demand strained, almost desperate. Evangeline didn't stop. She didn't let up or release his hands from where she wanted them on her body. When she cried out as he touched her intimately, Jake's control snapped. He jerked back, only to sweep her into his arms again, his mouth still fused to hers, and took a seat. Still kissing her, he slid his hands under her hips, lifting her effortlessly before settling her onto him. Evangeline cried out, her head falling back. A deep, guttural sound rumbled from Jake's throat as he buried his face in the crook of her neck, pleasure crashing through him at the sensation. He gave her a moment, letting her adjust, before he resumed lifting her against him, over and over, making sure she felt everything. Both of them trembled uncontrollably, bodies locked in rhythm, lost in sensation. "Jake," Eva whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Jake felt himself spiraling into a haze of overwhelming pleasure. "Kiss me," he murmured. Still trembling, Evangeline complied, pressing her lips to his. "Tell me to stop if it's too much," he whispered gently. "No," she breathed against his lips. "Don't stop," she moaned in a low, pleasure-filled tone. "I don't want to hurt you or the baby," Jake managed to say against her lips, his eyes closed, his breath uneven. Evangeline nibbled on his lips, her hand cradling his jaw, her fingers gently stroking his face. When he thrust harder against her, she trembled, her body shaking with tears. "Tell me to stop," he warned. "No," she whispered fervently. Jake let go of the restraint he had been holding onto and thrust upward again and again, pulling her down onto him in sync with his movements. "Jake!" Evangeline gasped, her body racked with pleasure, tears streaming down her face. She bit his lip and he groaned, his hips bucking harder until she reached the peak of her release. And he followed, both of them quivering against each other. Breathing heavily, Evangeline tried to steady herself, feeling utterly spent. She already knew there was no point in thinking about walking afterward. She would definitely be sore. "You are carrying me home, just so you know," she whispered into his ear. Jake shook with laughter. She playfully smacked him. Jake took her lips again, kissing her as he eased her off him. Then he got up and carried her to the shower stall, stepping in with her. The warm water cascaded over their heads as they shared a slow, tender kiss. "My beautiful Ava," Jake whispered in a low, affectionate voice. "You are mine," he added, his tone deepening into a possessive growl. Eva clung to him, relishing his touch and the way his voice affirmed his love for her. "I want my own special bachelorette party too," she whispered. Jake chuckled. "I bet you do," he replied. Then, tilting her chin up so she met his gaze, he added, "But I should warn you. Once we return to New York and I meet your parents, honey, I'm going to need you to be Dr. Mrs. Darfield." He punctuated each word with a kiss, making her giggle. Someone is in a hurry, she quipped shyly. Jake's gaze lowered to her chest, then down to her stomach. The way his eyes swept over her possessively made her press closer to him. His blue eyes darkened. Shouldn't I be? I mean, look at you, baby, he murmured, his voice low and husky. I want everyone to know you are taken. Mine. Even Christine Powell? Eva asked, searching his face. Especially Christine Powell, Jake answered, noting the intensity in her gaze. I love you, Eva. Only you, he reminded her. I can't imagine my life without you anymore, Jake, Eva said softly. Nor can I, baby, Jake murmured, kissing her again. I promise you, you have nothing to fear, he assured her again. A few minutes earlier, just as Jake had carried Evangeline into her cubicle, Ethan had done the same to Isla. She had given him an unwavering smile as he approached, and upon reaching her, he had continued to stare into her mesmerizing eyes. The thin white scar on her temple, for some reason, made him a little emotional. There was no denying it anymore. He more than desired Isla. She kissed him, cupping the back of his head as he leaned over her, returning her kiss. I've missed you all day, she whispered softly against his lips. That was quite a performance, Mr. Blackwood. What would the press think if they caught wind of it? Blackwood. Executive by day, Magic Mike by night, she teased. Who is this Blackwood you speak of, ma'am? He replied, lifting her by the hips, making her wrap her legs around him as he carried her into her private enclosure. Isla giggled, playfully pressing kisses to his lips while attempting to unclasp his mask. Ethan stopped her, shutting the door as he carried her to the massage table, setting her down atop it while he settled snugly between her legs. You may hide behind a mask, but I know it was you, she said with a mischievous grin. Tell me, how were you able to deduce it was me? He asked, as he unzipped her dress at the back, letting it slip down her shoulders. Isla's face burned with heat, and she instinctively moved to cover herself, but he gently batted her hand away, making her break into giggles. I asked you a question, Miss Devereaux, he reminded her, guiding her to lay back on the massage table as he slid the dress completely off her body. While she remained lying there, he lifted her foot, pressing her heel against his chest as he removed her strap. When she tried to press her thighs together out of modesty, he playfully smacked her again, making her dissolve into laughter. I could, sense that it was you. And then there was your height, your build, your eyes. I could recognize you even with my eyes closed, babe, she said, smiling and looking at him through her lashes. Ethan found the way she was lying there, looking at him like that, utterly arousing. He tossed her shoes aside. Well, thank you for letting me know the disguise was a waste of time, he quipped. You thought I wouldn't be able to tell it was you, she challenged. Ethan took long strides to the food platters, picking up a chocolate ice cream and a bottle of honey before returning to his place between her legs. She immediately focused on him. We were all hoping for anonymity, he said, pausing before playfully smacking her on the bum. Isla gasped, both in shock and from the thrill of sensation that rushed through her at the act. Ethan, she protested, feigning pain. You also voted for male strippers, huh? He teased, smacking her again. Isla tried not to laugh, but the gleam of indignation in his eyes made it hard. It felt good to know he was jealous. She shook with laughter. It was a harmless plan, though, she said between giggles. Harmless, huh? He mused. So you call watching random men thrust their hips around harmless? He smacked her again. Isla laughed, but the sound quickly turned into a sudden moan when Ethan deftly parted her legs, poured honey onto her skin, and swooped down to lick it off. Baby! She gasped. Ethan reached up with his left hand to fill it up with her softness, while the other gripped her thigh. He then latched his mouth between her legs, making her writhe beneath him in ecstasy. Ethan! She screamed, her inhibitions slipping. Harmless, you say? Was his only response. His voice was a low, primal rasp. You're mine, Isla, he growled as he continued torturing her with pleasure. Don't ever forget that again, he added in a low, husky drawl. Yes, ooh, yes, Isla managed to say, her body quivering with ecstasy. Just as she was on the verge of release, Ethan lifted his face and grasped her thighs, pulling her down toward the lower part of the massage table, leaving half of her body hanging off the edge. He cupped her behind and claimed her. Isla trembled violently as she surrendered to release, and only then did Ethan pursue his own pleasure to its peak. Much later, as they lay on the Arabian rug, talking and eating, Ethan sprawled out on his back while Isla rested beside him, her head on his chest, a cover draped over the lower half of their bodies. Ethan ran his fingers through her hair, gently stroking her scalp, making her eyelids flutter with pleasure. He exhaled a deep sigh. For a few hours he had found respite from his life, enough to make the necessary decisions. But now it was clear. Ian was a part of his life, and the road to recovery would be long. Returning to the Middle East meant leaving Ian behind in the United States under Aria and Nathaniel's care. Then there was Isla. Could he really do this? Maintain a long-distance relationship when all he wanted was to have her with him? The idea of forming a partnership with Nate and Alex resurfaced. It wasn't just about not wanting to leave his father and Isla in New York. He wasn't sure he wanted any life other than the one he had now, surrounded by his friends. He had always thought it was unrealistic to expect them all to remain as close as they had been in school. But the past few weeks had proven otherwise. The reason he had originally gone to the Middle East no longer existed. He had enough money now to start his own life, and maybe, just maybe, everything that was happening was a sign. "What are you thinking about? You suddenly went quiet," Isla asked, raising her head to peer into his darkened gaze. Ethan didn't respond right away. He stared into her eyes before finally asking, "If you found out you were pregnant with my child right now, what would you do?" His voice carried an unmistakable intensity. "You already know what I would do, Ethan," Isla replied, her expression turning serious. Ethan let out another sigh. "You want this? Truly want me?" His scrutiny was unwavering. Isla nodded, her lips trembling slightly. Ethan gave a small nod in return. "I need to talk to Nate," Ethan said. "About what?" Isla asked, her gaze searching his. "Making sure I'm here to be a father to my child when you decide to keep it," he replied. Isla's eyes darted anxiously as she studied his face. Outside, Yen watched as Will sauntered toward her. She then turned in the direction of her enclosure, walking toward the entrance while glancing over her shoulder at him, her own big, hunky man. The corner of his lips tugged into a sexy smile, making her heart flutter. Sometimes, Yen had to pinch herself to reassure herself she wasn't living a lie. Never in her wildest imagination had she thought she would meet a man like Will, unpretentious and kind, and all she had done was honor her boss's invitation to act as a backup. Now she understood why Dr. Sterling had stayed at the Hawthorne estate. Who in their right mind would want to leave a community of imperfect humans just trying their best, breaking a few rules and embracing simplicity and happiness? The back of her eyes pricked with tears as Will joined her inside the enclosure. A surge of fear gripped her at the thought of their relationship not working out. She was certain she would never be the same again. How could she ever find another man like him? Will met her gaze and immediately noticed the unshed tears glistening in her eyes. The depth of her emotions pulled at something deep inside him. He took off his mask, dropped it on a side table, and closed the distance between them. "Was our choreography that bad?" he quipped as he cupped the side of her face. Yen giggled, and the tears spilled from her eyes. She shut them, rubbing her face against his palm. Will raised his other hand to cup the other side of her face, watching as she slowly brushed her cheeks against the warmth of his hands. "I'm just so happy," Yen whispered, "and I'm scared of how happy you make me." Will chuckled and leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. "What about me, Yen? What are we going to do with my fears?" he murmured, pulling her into his arms and wrapping them tightly around her. "Will," she whispered, holding on to him as if afraid he might slip away. Will moved, gently guiding her toward the sitting area on the left side of the enclosure. He lowered himself onto the Persian rug and pulled her down with him. As he lay on the floor, Yen rested over him, slowly leaning in to kiss him. He chuckled softly, meeting her lips as his hand settled on the small of her back, moving up and down in a slow, gentle motion, smoothing over the fabric of her chic dinner dress. "You have nothing to fear, Yen. I'm yours for as long as you want me," Will said in a low, husky tone. Even if I stay forever, she teased, tugging at his lower lip with her teeth. I'm hoping you will. What are the chances of meeting another woman who makes me feel the way I do right now, Kim? Yen froze, the playfulness drained from her face. Do you mean that? She asked in a near whisper, her voice soft and hesitant. Will met her eyes. I'm ready to be your test subject, Dr. Yen. Are you ready to be mine? Her lips trembled as she nodded. Will lifted his head and captured her lips in a deep kiss. You're mine then, all mine. He whispered against her mouth. His hand slid lower, slipping beneath her dress as he claimed her lips again. His kiss fervent, giving her no room to respond as he captured her tongue, suckling the tip. At the same time, he reached between their bodies, tugging down his cargo pants. He didn't give her time to remove her panties. He simply shifted the fabric aside. Yen trembled above him, her lips parted, her lashes fluttering. Her breathing grew shallow, then louder as he slowly guided her to take all of him. Will, she breathed, barely able to speak. He guided her into a rhythmic motion, his hands gripping her hips, keeping her in place as he spread her atop him. Yen's eyes rolled back in ecstasy as he increased his pace, then bucked upward. A scream tore from her lips as she collapsed over his chest, surrendering to him completely. Then he shifted, rolling her beneath him, his body hovering over hers, trapping her beneath his weight. He pinned both of her hands above her head, kissing her deeply as he moved. Her legs fell apart, and he positioned himself between them, bucking with deliberate intensity. Yen couldn't speak. All she could do was tremble with pleasure, occasionally opening her eyes to meet his dark, intense gaze. You're going to get me pregnant, she whispered. Good, he murmured, bucking harder. She arched her back, her body tightening around him as she cried out, lost in the overwhelming pleasure he gave her. It would be nice to have a legacy too, Will murmured against her lips, his voice low and rough. Tears welled in Yen's eyes as she connected his words to what Dr. Hawthorne had said a few days ago when they first arrived in Alaska, that the Hawthorne guards wanted to live their lives without pretense, knowing every day could be their last. Will, please, Yen whispered, crying. What did I do? He asked softly, kissing her. He felt her hands tug free from his grasp and he let her go. But instead of pulling away, she wrapped her arms around his neck, her body trembling with emotion. What did I do? He asked again, his voice laced with concern. I can't lose you, Will, she breathed. Please, she added. Will smiled and latched his mouth to hers. You will not, he promised against her lips. Afterward, Yen sat up while Will lay down with his head in her lap. She stroked his scalp and fed him berries from the platter. I'm falling in love with you, Will, she whispered, her eyes gleaming with affection. I would be greatly offended if you weren't, Yen, he replied. She burst into giggles and smacked him on the chest. Silly goose, she said. He grinned and pulled her head down to him so he could kiss her again and again, until the playfulness ebbed away and the breathing quickened, the only sound in the enclosed space. 3 enclosures to the left, Anton drew Dawn into his arms and whispered, Remember when I told you it was getting increasingly hard to sleep without holding you? He buried his face in the nook of her neck, holding her close as they swayed to the low rhythmic blues filtering through the soundproof enclosure. I remember, Dawn replied with a smile, allowing him to guide her steps as they moved together in sync. It's spilling into daylight and we can't have that, he murmured. Dawn shook with laughter. If I'm getting you straight, you don't like missing me during the day? She asked with interest. Yeah, 'cause that's just weird, he replied, feigning seriousness. Half the time we were away, he started to say. Away to where exactly, Anton? She probed, pretending to be offended. He chuckled. That's highly classified. I see. So it was us ladies against you fellas, huh? She pressed, mock seriousness in her tone. Nah, how could we ever be against you ladies? He countered as he twirled her, drawing her back into his arms. He cupped her jaw and added, when all we were doing was making sure you had exactly what you wanted. His voice dropped into a low, husky tone. Dawn's lips slowly stretched into a smile. He lowered his head and brushed a feathery kiss against her lips. I would have preferred it private, Dawn whispered against his lips. I'm not a fan of sharing how sexily delicious my man is, she added. Anton grinned into her eyes, his gaze dark and hooded. "Are you sure that's what you want? Or this, Dawn?" Anton challenged, his voice low and husky. He spun her away from him in a fluid motion, only to pull her back against his chest. With her back to him, he pressed a slow kiss to the curve of her neck, his lips warm against her skin. As he did, his hands moved to the straps of her dress, slipping them off her shoulders. Dawn felt breathless as he twirled her away again, only for him to draw her back, making her kick the fabric aside until it pooled on the floor. Now in nothing but her underwear, her chest rose and fell in anticipation. Anton hooked his fingers beneath the clasp of her bra and unfastened it with ease. He spun her once more, the delicate fabric peeling away mid-motion before falling to the floor. When he pulled her back to him, he let go of her hand for just a second, just long enough to slide his fingers to the waistband of her panties. Holding her gaze, he tore the fabric away in one swift motion. Dawn's chest rose and fell rapidly, her breath quickening. The sight of her, completely bare before him, drove Anton wild. His grip tightened as he spun her once more, and when he pulled her back for the final time, he lifted her effortlessly into his arms. Dawn smiled into his face. Anton didn't smile back. His eyes were dark and smoldering. Carrying her to the Persian rug, he laid her down, his own body now stripped of clothing. With fluid, snake-like prowl, Anton began to move, his body rolling like a wave as he hovered over her, hips tilting, abs contracting, muscles flexing in a slow, rhythmic dance. His movements were hypnotic, teasing, never fully pressing into her, only letting their skin brush in fleeting, agonizing moments. He kept his weight off her, his body shifting over hers in a display of control, his abs tightening and releasing as he let his hips roll against the air just above her. He gripped her thigh, hooking it over his shoulder as he dipped lower, brushing his lips over the sensitive spot between her legs. Dawn gasped, her body arching in response, but before she could reach for him, Anton drew back. Dawn breathed through parted lips, her gaze dimmed in ardent desire as she watched him, his half-smirk teasing, daring her to take what she wanted. But each time she tried to wrap her legs around him, he evaded her, teasing her mercilessly. His lips brushed over her collarbone, down the curve of her soft fullness, but never where she needed him most. Then, just as she arched toward him in frustration, Anton gripped her wrists, pinning them above her head. His gaze burned into hers as he continued to move, his hips pressing in slow, rolling thrusts against the space between her parted thighs. She whimpered. "Anton?" he smirked. With a sudden move, he rolled her over, guiding her to lay face down on the rug. He positioned himself above her, pressing his chest against her bare back, his lips trailing down the curve of her spine. His muscles flexed as he ripped his body over hers in deliberate fluid motions. The way he moved was maddening, all heat, power, and rhythm, every shift of his hips driving her closer to insanity. "Anton, baby, please," Dawn finally pleaded, her voice sounding shaky and desperate. "Isn't this what you want, babe?" he teased, mercilessly. "No, I want you," Dawn moaned, pleading. Just when she thought he would flip her over and continue the slow, torturous game, she felt him lift her hips. One large, warm palm pressed against the lower part of her stomach, steadying her. Then, without warning, he claimed her. Dawn cried out, moaning his name as her entire body shook. The pleasure crashed through her in waves, consuming her completely as she embraced release. Anton leaned over, pressing a kiss on the hollow of her back. "My turn, babe," he whispered. Dawn surrendered to the intensity of his strokes, her body responding to every movement he made. Meanwhile, inside Arya's enclosure, Nathaniel wrapped her naked body in layers of blankets, put on his houseclothes, and carried her out of the marquee tent into the cold. Ash and Stephen, who were on night watch, noticed him heading toward one of the jeeps and quickly approached. Ash rushed ahead to open the back door, and Nathaniel gave him a nod of thanks. Stephen slid into the driver's seat while Nathaniel got into the back with Arya. Without exchanging a word, they drove across the field. When they arrived in front of the log house, Stephen parked, and Ash stepped out to open the back door for Nathaniel as he carefully lifted Arya once more. "Good night, boss," Stephen and Ash greeted him. "Thanks, guys." "Good night," Nathaniel said before carrying her inside. Ash and Stephen lingered outside, watching with quiet smiles. "I want something that intense one day," Stephen mused quietly. Ash scoffed, which only encouraged Stephen to start teasing him. Andrew carried Anita into their enclosure while she continued to kiss and tease him, calling him Sir MacLeod. She made him laugh and stirred up all kinds of feelings in him. The dancing had been a challenge. He was a damn captain in the Marines. Rolling his hips and putting on a literal spectacle wasn't exactly in his wheelhouse. He noticed a few of his men struggling to get into character as well. Jake, Charles, Lewis, and Aidan weren't exactly at ease, unlike Adam, Anton, and Will, who were clowning around. Shaking their asses on a bloody stage wasn't what they had signed up for. But then Andrew had focused on Nathaniel. He could tell Nathaniel wasn't thrilled about strutting around on stage either, but during practice, he had heard him say, "The things I do for my love." Andrew was pretty certain that hearing Nathaniel and watching him put in the effort had started to change his own perspective, and he was sure it had done the same for the others. They weren't dancing for themselves or for random people. Each of them was doing it for their woman. "Let's focus on the prize, undercover mode people," Anton had teased, and that statement had only reinforced the shift in perception. Witnessing Anita's reaction, her excitement, her cheers, her calling out, "That's my man!" made it all worth it. Anita was always playful, always carrying herself like an indestructible badass, but with him she was different. With him, she was a baby girl, his baby girl. Andrew kissed her back in earnest, drawing moans and shuddering whimpers from her. He cupped the back of her neck, holding her in place as he pressed her against his body with one hand, taking her in completely. The sound of her whispering his name with raw passion sent a surge through him, making his excitement grow. He had planned their time here carefully, pretend they were on a date, eat first, dance, then make love before revealing the surprise he had waiting for her outside their window view of the snowy plain. But now, it was starting to feel like they might have to do things in reverse, or maybe start all over again, because there was no way in hell he was sitting down to dinner with a bulge in his pants, feeling ridiculously uncomfortable, and she wasn't helping him calm down either. "There's a view I need you to see," he said, or at least he thought he did. His voice came out somewhere between a guttural growl, a grunt, and a groan. He was so taut for her, damn near bursting. When she bit his lower lip, his entire body quivered at the impact. He moved, carrying her toward the window. Their breathing, her soft moans, and the whispered sweet nothings between them were the only sounds that mattered. At the window, he reached for the remote resting on a shelf to the side, then pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Her dark brown irises had deepened with hunger. Her plum lips parted as she breathed. "Baby," she whispered, longing thick in her voice. Andrew grinned knowingly. He was glad he wasn't the only one who had abandoned the traditional pattern of a date. He gave her a quick kiss, drawing a moan from her lips, then set her down and turned her toward the glass. With the press of the remote, floodlights illuminated the snowy plain beyond the glass wall. Anita's breath came shallow and dragged, her mind hazy with her need for Andrew. She was about to ask what he wanted her to see when movement in the distance caught her eye. From the edge of the framing woods, baby pandas leisurely strolled into view. She squealed, "Oh my God, baby pandas!" Andrew chuckled, burying his face in the nook of her neck. He didn't bother to look. He'd seen them before. He knew they were adorable, knew Anita would love them, but right now he was far more focused on tending to their current situation before they restarted their date night. Pressing himself against her lush back, he exhaled deeply. Damn, she was perfectly sculpted. There was nothing out of place on her hourglass frame. Every time he got her unclothed, she stole his breath all over again. Taking both of her hands, he guided them to the window pane, flattening her palms against the cool glass. Then, pressing a kiss on her collarbone, he whispered, "You like the view?" As he unclipped her sleeveless dress. The fabric slipped down her body, pooling at her feet, exposing her completely. Anita shuddered, her bare skin meeting his as her front touched the cold glass. She parted her lips, eyes fluttering shut as Andrew pressed slow kisses along the back of her shoulders. He positioned her, making sure her hands stayed against the window and her legs parted just right. his large palms smoothed over her stomach in a slow, possessive sweep, making her soul tingle for him. How was she supposed to focus on the view when he was doing all that to her? Outside, the baby pandas played in the snow, still in her line of sight. But Anita was far more in tune with the sensations Andrew was pulling from her. His hands, his lips, his warm body flush against her back, making her delirious with desire. Andrew, she whispered with ardent longing as the hand he placed against her stomach moved upward, making her pant with heat. He fondled and stroked as his lips trailed down her spine and back up again. All the while, his other hand at her front never stopped its torment. Then one hand moved to her throat, cupping it gently as the second snaked across her middle. She felt him lift her, his hold firm, the grip at her throat still in place as he positioned her just right, just before claiming her completely. Anita's vision blurred with unshed tears as an intense surge of ecstasy erupted inside her. "You didn't answer me, baby. Do you like the view?" he whispered against her skin, his body enveloping her, his movements unrelenting, driving her deeper into pleasure. "Yes, yes," Anita responded, her voice low and shaky. "Good," he murmured in a deep, husky drawl. "I'm enjoying mine too, wife." His voice was soft, mellowed, filled with something even deeper than desire. Anita couldn't tell how many times she had reached the peak, the telltale signs rolling down her inner thighs, and yet Andrew didn't stop. She felt like an instrument of pleasure in his embrace, completely at his mercy. "I love you," she whispered, raw with emotion. "What I feel for you far exceeds words, Annie," he replied, his voice low, cool, laden with unshakable devotion. "I would give my life for you and the child you carry." A shudder racked her as his words sank in. "I will be a good husband and father to our children. That, I promise you, and nothing will ever tear us apart," he vowed softly into her ear. Anita trembled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Let me hold you. I want to hold you, Andrew," she pleaded in a whisper, her voice barely there. "Give me 8 minutes more," he replied, a smile lacing his voice as he increased his pace. Soon enough, neither of them could speak. Words became impossible as they drowned together in pure, overwhelming ecstasy. Much later, after eating and with their drinks by their sides, Andrew sat up with his back against the glass panel while Anita sat between his legs, her back resting against his muscled chest. His hand drifted to her thigh, fingers tracing slow circles over her skin as she continued to entertain him with stories about their day. Her laughter, spilling over easily, filled the enclosure as he listened, amusement evident in his expression. Andrew's gaze flicked to the corner where a hidden camera was discreetly placed in each cubicle. The corner of his lips twitched in a knowing smile. She hadn't figured it out yet, but he knew she was sharp. She would soon realize why each man instinctively led his woman to the right enclosure. Leaning down, he pressed a kiss on her shoulder blade before capturing her earlobe between his lips and suckling gently. He felt her whole body still as she drew in a sudden breath. Her words cut off mid-sentence. "Just so you know, Nate is going to have your hide for being a bad influence," he murmured, his voice laced with amusement. Anita shook with laughter. "You bad, bad girl," he whispered in a low growl, making her tilt her head back just enough for him to capture her lips in a soft, lingering kiss. Hours later, Aria woke up alone in bed, the telltale signs of the night before registering in her body. The memories of the men appearing on stage at the marquee tent, performing an authentic Magic Mike routine, replayed in her head. The events that followed made her face flush, and she giggled to herself. She was certain the ladies must have stories to tell, and she couldn't wait to hear them all. First, she got up to clean herself up. She slipped on a spaghetti strap dress to make it easier to feed the babies, then went looking for Nathaniel. She found him in the gym, hanging from the pull-up bars. His tall, muscular body was a captivating sight, reminding her of him dancing on that stage. She was certain she would never forget that performance. Tearing her eyes away from him long enough to take in the compact gym, she noticed the dim lighting, the space illuminated mostly by the cool glow of overhead fixtures. Outside, snowflakes drifted past the glass wall. their silent descent contrasting with the rhythmic sounds of exertion within. The air was thick with the scent of rubber mats, metal, faint traces of sweat and coffee. A row of neatly stacked dumbbells lined one side of the room alongside resistance machines. The faint hum of a treadmill in standby mode added to the quiet atmosphere, the only other sound being Nathaniel's steady breathing as he pulled himself up with ease. The room felt intimate, almost cocooned from the cold world outside. A small smile played on her lips as she leaned against the doorway, content to watch him a little longer before making her presence known. "Join me," Nathaniel said, his voice resonating through the compact room. He had spotted her through a metal reflection. "Good morning, baby," Arya responded in a low, sultry tone as she strode in. She walked across the room, moving around the machine he was using until she stood in front of him, grinning up at him. "Good morning, beautiful," he replied, his voice deep and mellow. "Thank you for yesterday," she said shyly. Nathaniel let go of the pull-up bar, reached for a towel and wiped his face and neck. As he stepped forward, Arya instinctively stepped back. "I've had my bath, don't get me sweaty," she warned playfully. "And to think I was just hoping for a simple peck," he quipped, arching an eyebrow. Arya burst into giggles, but before she could react, he suddenly grabbed her. When she tried to push him away, he seized her wrists, lifting them above her head as he swooped in for a kiss. She couldn't stop laughing. "Oh my God, Nathan, you got all your sweat on me," she cried out. He chuckled. "Keep resisting, and this might turn into something more." He trailed off, eyes lowering to the outline of her chest. Then, with a smirk, he added, "Guess what? It's too late." Arya groaned just as he buried his face against her chest, his touch sending shivers through her. As her giggles turned into soft moans, he lifted her effortlessly, bringing his face up to meet her gaze. He guided her hands to grip the pull-up bar, then reached under her dress, tugging down her panties. Her breath hitched in anticipation as he grasped the rails beside her hands, supporting her back, his body pressed intimately against hers. The position made her unexpectedly emotional. She remembered that morning in his New York apartment, the day she went to the hospital for her interview, the morning that started it all, the beginning of her career and the official start of their union. "Baby," Arya moaned as he became one with her. "Move for me, beautiful," Nathaniel groaned. She obeyed, her movements driving him deeper. His moans echoed in the room as he increased his pace, bucking against her, drawing loud cries from her lips. 20 minutes later, as they shared a shower, he lifted her chin with his finger, making her look up at him. "You are very welcome, baby," he murmured, responding to her earlier gratitude. Arya giggled, covering her face, unable to meet his gaze. He chuckled deep in his throat. She playfully smacked his chest before finally managing to slip away. Much later, on her way to the children's room, she spotted Anita appearing at the end of the hallway with Anna, Noria, Yen, and Claire. The women let out a squeal and rushed forward, enveloping Arya in a group hug. She collapsed into their embrace, laughing. "All hail our Queen Ariana," Anita quipped. The others joined in, making her laugh the more. Early on, Nathaniel, Alex, and Ethan joined Justin along with the Hawthorne guards, who were volunteering to participate in the bachelorette party entertainment. After a few minutes of pleasantries, they climbed into a Jeep with Andrew in the driver's seat and Jake in the passenger seat. "So, where are we going?" "It's a little too early to head to Marcus's, right?" Ethan asked. "We're actually heading to your house," Nathaniel replied. "But we're going to make a few stops first." "My house? Whatever for? Are you already sick of having me around?" Ethan arched an eyebrow at Nathaniel. "Don't be dense," Alex interjected, reaching out to playfully smack Ethan on the back of the head. "Hey," Ethan protested. "It probably has to do with Ian's supposed family," Alex added. "Thank you for your faith in me, Alex," Nathaniel replied, then smacked Ethan as well. "Seriously," Ethan exclaimed. "Jake, are you just going to sit there while I get physically assaulted? I'll have you know my hand isn't completely healed yet, and my doctor won't be very happy if my recovery is jeopardized." Jake, Andrew, and Justin shook with quiet laughter before Jake cleared his throat and said, "Please, no hitting Mr. Blackwood, boss. You too, Mr. Sterndale." Nathaniel burst out laughing. "So, now you're hiding behind Ariana and Jake?" he teased. "You're lucky I'm wounded, Nate. I'd wipe the floor with your ass," Ethan said through gritted teeth, making his voice sound like a growl. Everyone in the car burst out laughing. "Why are we going to Ian's house?" Ethan asked, his expression shifting into a scowl. "Diana and her sons are getting bailed. I want to make sure they don't get the bright idea to return to your house," Nathaniel replied. Ethan blinked, the playfulness fading from his face. "Who's helping them?" he asked, simmering anger creeping into his voice. "I have no idea," Nathaniel lied. "What's important is that they know they're not welcome in Sylvan Ridge," he added. Justin chuckled, quietly shaking his head. "How is that possible, Nate? We can stop them from going into Ian's house, but there are still inns and hotels they could stay in," Ethan pointed out. "Watch me," Nathaniel said, leaning back comfortably in his seat. Ethan gaped at him. "Please tell me you're not thinking of doing what I think you're thinking of doing," he said, eyes widening. "What do you think I'm thinking of doing, Blackwood?" Nathaniel smirked. "Booking all the damn rooms in every inn and hotel," Ethan shot back. "No," Nathaniel said smoothly. "Andrew is inviting our Hawthorne agents to stay in town for the carnival. Turns out we don't have enough room for all of them. It is the festive season after all, and we take bonding seriously in the Hawthorne conglomerate. Besides, my boys and Tristan are very excited about the carnival." He delivered the explanation with a straight face. Ethan turned to Alex. "Please, Sterndale, I cannot stress this enough. If I ever have any kind of misunderstanding with Nathaniel, remind me that he is the devil." Alex fought back a laugh, clearing his throat. "Sure, I got you, man," he said, his voice hoarse with restrained laughter. Nathaniel grinned innocently at Ethan, then patted him on the chest. About 2 hours later, after stopping by at the 2 major inns and hotels in town that are still in service, they arrived at the Blackwood family home. Ethan immediately noticed that the gate had been replaced with a grand, gold-coated wrought iron design, a stark contrast to the previous plain and simple style, and uniformed armed guards now stood at the entrance of the compound. As they drove in, Ethan took in the modifications Nathaniel had made to the estate. The luxurious aesthetic was nothing short of over the top, clearly meant to make a statement. He knew that Nathaniel was fully aware that Ian, and he had no genuine intention of residing there for an extended period, which made the grandeur all the more amusing. Chuckling softly, Ethan shook his head at the sheer audacity of it all. Stepping into the house and entering the living room, Ethan was struck by a mix of disbelief and amusement. He remembered what the living room used to look like, stuffy and understated, with heavy velvet drapes, dark wood furniture, and carpets that seemed to absorb the very light in the room. Now it was unrecognizable, transformed into a space of opulence and extravagance. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, reflecting light onto the marble floors. The furniture, upholstered in cream tones with gold accents, was arranged meticulously to exude elegance. White roses in golden vases adorned every available surface, complementing the soft, warm lighting. Ethan couldn't help but chuckle. Nathaniel's redesign was the epitome of pettiness, a deliberate move to outshine anyone who dared to compare. Because what in the name of rubbing it in their faces was going on here, he thought to himself. The stately charm of the old decor had been completely overshadowed by this new display of wealth and power. It was clear. Nathaniel wanted everyone to know exactly who they were dealing with. Nathaniel entered the house alongside Andrew and Jake, with Alex ahead of them. He took a quick look around and said, "You know what, on second thought, I think we should be more civil, and at least let Diana come inside with her boys. It's freezing outside, don't you think?" Alex and Justin burst out laughing as Ethan turned to frown at him. "And Andrew, don't forget to send Ethan the bill. It's good for him to know just how much this payback is costing him," Nathaniel added. "Yes, boss," Andrew replied with a grin. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. Nathaniel gave him a friendly pat on the back and slipped his hands into the pockets of his trousers. He then strolled toward a glass door at the end of the expansive space. Opening it, he stepped out onto an elevated rooftop lounge, enclosed by floor-to-ceiling glass panels that provided a clear view of the snowy landscape while creating a warm, sheltered space. The early morning light filtered softly through the glass, casting a gentle glow on the soft beige tones of the furnishings. A rectangular fire pit stood as the focal point of the area, surrounded by spacious modern sofas designed for comfort. Minimalist potted plants were strategically placed throughout, adding subtle touches of greenery to the sleek contemporary design. Outside, snow fell steadily, blanketing the landscape in white and enhancing the peaceful atmosphere within the enclosed space. "Okay, this looks like a nice view to pass the time," he quipped. "I'll get the new housekeeper," Andrew said from behind him. Soon enough, an elderly man returned with Andrew. The man stood over 6 feet tall, with rugged features complemented by a neatly trimmed grey beard and short grey hair covered with a hairnet. His arms bore tattoos, and he wore a plaid shirt beneath a black apron which hung over loosely fitted trousers. The combination of his attire gave him a professional yet approachable appearance. "Boss, this is George Lawson. He's a retired naval officer and an excellent chef. He's managing the house now," Andrew introduced. Nathaniel nodded in acknowledgement as the man said, "It's an immense pleasure to meet you, Mr. Hawthorne." Alex, who had joined Nathaniel, extended a handshake to the older man and said, "Alex Sterndale, friend of Ethan Blackwood." The housekeeper nodded with a worn smile. "A pleasure to meet you too, Mr. Sterndale," the man replied. "I hope you've been introduced to your boss," Nathaniel asked. "Yes, sir. Mr. Blackwood graces us with his presence in the kitchen." "He's inspecting the house," the older man replied. "Good," Nathaniel said, then added, "We'll be spending a better part of today here, George. Although I'm of the opinion that no one can rival Miss Jonas's cooking. I hope you won't make us regret not bringing her along." The older man chuckled. "Oh, I've heard of Miss Jonas. I look forward to meeting the legend and can only aspire to be as memorable with my cooking as she has been with the Hawthorne guards," George replied. Nathaniel chuckled and gave him a dismissive nod. When he left, Alex said, "I like him already." Ethan, now accompanied by Justin, Charles, Aidan, Will, Adam and Jake, joined Alex and Nathaniel on the patio. "You outdid yourself, Nathaniel. Not a single old staff member of Blackwood in sight," Ethan commented with a chuckle. "I would have kept the housekeeper. I just didn't think getting poisoned was going to be worth it," Nathaniel quipped, making the men laugh. A short while later, George returned, carrying a tray with a bottle of fine whiskey and an assortment of small, elegantly arranged appetizers. Setting the tray down on the low table between the men, he gestured toward the glasses he had brought along. "I thought it fitting to welcome you with a drink, gentlemen," George said as he uncorked the bottle and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into each glass. A single malt, aged 25 years, smooth with just the right amount of warmth, he added, his voice low and gruff from years of experience. Nathaniel picked up his glass, rolling the whiskey slightly before lifting it to his nose. The aroma rose smoothly, rich and layered. There was an initial warmth of oak, deep and slightly smoky from years spent aging in wooden casks. Beneath that, he detected hints of caramel and vanilla, mellow and sweet, balanced by a faint trace of dried fruits, perhaps figs or apricots. A subtle wisp of spice followed, something like cinnamon or nutmeg, rounding out the complexity. Satisfied that it wasn't diluted or mixed, he took a sip, letting the full-bodied flavors settle on his tongue. He gave a slight nod of approval. "Not a bad start, George," he remarked simply. Alex followed suit, taking a sip and letting the flavors settle before giving the housekeeper an appreciative glance. "I have to admit, this is excellent," he said. George allowed himself a small smile before directing his gaze at Ethan. Ethan simply raised his glass in a silent salute before taking a sip. When George turned his attention to Justin and the rest of the men, they followed Ethan's gesture, raising their glasses one by one in acknowledgement. Satisfied, George gestured toward the plates. "Now, for a taste of my cooking. I prepared a selection of canapes, seared duck breast with a blackberry reduction, smoked salmon on rye with dill cream, and a personal favorite, caramelized onion and goat's cheese tartlets." Nathaniel took one of the duck canapes and bit into it. He found the richness of the meat balanced perfectly with the tart sweetness of the blackberry sauce. He chewed thoughtfully before glancing at George. "Well, I suppose we won't be missing Miss Jonas too much today, he admitted. Everyone chuckled. Alex had already moved on to the smoked salmon. If this is just an introduction, I'm eager to see what you can do with a full meal, he said with a grin. It tastes great, Justin chimed in. What he said, Ethan added as he took a bite. George inclined his head slightly. I appreciate the confidence, gentlemen. Lunch will be my true test, but for now consider this a humble assurance that you won't go hungry under my care, he joked. Ripples of chuckles spread across the patio. A bold claim, George. Let's hope you live up to it, Ethan challenged. I must warn you, though, Nathaniel Hawthorne is loyal to the core. Whatever you come up with will still fall a little short of his Miss Jonas's abilities, he added. The housekeeper gave an acknowledging nod with a chuckle. I'll do my best, sir. With that, he turned and disappeared inside the house. Just then, the buzz of a message alert sounded, prompting everyone to pull out their phones. As soon as Nathaniel saw that the message was from Andrew, he opened it and found a link. Clicking on it, he saw a live feed inside Aria's cubicle while she was getting a massage. He sat still, his eyes locking onto Andrew's gaze. Andrew, immediately recognizing the cold scrutiny in Nathaniel's expression, quickly said, Each link is private and linked to individuals who are partners to the ladies in each enclosure, he explained hastily. How many people have clicked this link today, Andrew? Nathaniel asked, arching an eyebrow at the older man. Just me, before the activities began, of course, to make sure we had the right enclosures, he replied quickly. You have no idea how close to death's door you were just now, old man, Ethan quipped, making everyone laugh. Nathaniel, however, did not. What's the purpose of the camera? He asked with keen interest. It helps each man know where to go and, if they're interested, see what their partner is up to, Andrew supplied. Nathaniel nodded but didn't like it. However, he soon noticed that the camera wasn't directly focused on the bathtub area or the massage table. Instead, it captured a partial view of the massage therapists, the entrance of the enclosure, and the central stage area. But then the ladies started to move their massage tables to the center space. Nathaniel's cold gaze flickered in Andrew's direction. Apologies, boss, Andrew said with a smile. They aren't doing anything inappropriate, they're fine, Alex chimed in, chuckling. Nathaniel felt like he was on the hot seat until Aria finally put on a bathrobe. Boss? A male voice called from the entrance, drawing everyone's attention. It was George. I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's a woman here with 3 men claiming this is their house, the older man reported. Ethan grinned. You have no idea how happy you've made me with that description, George. By all means, let them inside. I'll join you in the living room, he said. Yes, boss, George replied, then left. Do you need backup? Jake asked as Ethan stood up. Nah, I'm taking it from here. You guys have done enough for me, Ethan said. Are you sure? Nathaniel added. Oh, yes, I am, Ethan replied and followed George. In the living room, Ethan felt a sense of triumph when he entered and saw Diana, looking nothing like her usual self. She wore no makeup, no fancy clothes, and her hair was unstyled. Along with her children, all of whom wore clothes that looked like hand-me-downs. For some reason, Ethan felt like he was in an alternate universe, because the hand-me-downs would have suited him better. I thought we'd settle the issue of whose property this is. What do you want? Ethan said, standing a considerable distance from the 4 of them as he slipped his hands into his trouser pockets. We're here to see Ian, Diana managed to say, her eyes chilling and unfeeling. Ethan didn't miss how she scanned the luxurious living room with ardent intensity. The Ian you almost killed, Ethan replied with a scoff. He's alive and he owes us, Benedict thundered, only calming down when his mother glanced in his direction. It seemed like a rehearsed speech that wasn't quite going well. If you think Ian owes you any money, file a lawsuit against him. You don't need to be here, Ethan replied. You're pathetic, do you know that? One of Benedict's junior brothers sneered. You have so many daddy issues that, despite how terribly he treated you and your bitch of a mother, you still accept him back, he said, laughing in an empty, hollow way. Ethan leveled a gaze at him, recognizing the tactic and wondering what they had hoped he would do, and what their plans were if he reacted. When Ethan didn't respond quickly enough, They exchanged glances and looked back at him, the idiot working his jaw, a low, menacing growl escaping from him. "If you're quite done, you can leave," Ethan said calmly, now that it was clear they had some kind of plan. He watched the desperation in their eyes, how Diana fidgeted. Then she snapped, "We have nowhere to go." Ethan shrugged non-committally. "You're not very smart then. That's still none of my business," he replied. "Ian had all my money frozen," Diana retorted. "The mean bastard had all our money frozen," Benedict yelled in affirmation. "That still sounds like your problem. Please leave," Ethan said. "Oh, no you don't," one of Benedict's brothers snapped. Then the two lunged at Ethan. Despite being ready, Ethan didn't react fast enough, perhaps because he hadn't expected them to attack in a house full of security. Nathaniel, who had been standing by the patio entrance, watching, moved quickly. Pushing Ethan back and out of the way, he kicked one of the men away, punched the other on the jaw, and sent both flying away from Ethan. When Benedict pulled out a small knife and lunged, Nathaniel kicked it from his hand, jumped and punched him hard in the chest, sending him to his knees. Diana screamed just as the Hawthorne guard swooped in, grabbed her and began dragging her children out. "Please, please don't hurt my boys," she cried. Nathaniel, using gloved hands, pulled out 2 bundles of cash wrapped in transparent nylon and offered them to Diana. "Take it and get out," he growled. Diana hesitated, then grabbed the money and rushed after the guards. "You don't need backup, huh? Idiot," Nathaniel said to Ethan with annoyance as he strode past him back to the patio. Ethan, watching his retreating back, looked upward and said, "I have no idea why you think I deserve him, but thank you." A smile tugged at his lips. Ethan already knew he was in for a round of teasing before he rejoined the others on the patio. Alex was the first to speak up. "I thought you said, with confidence if I might add, that you didn't need backup," he teased. "Shut up, Sterndale," Ethan shot back. When Justin laughed, Ethan glared at him. "Don't think that just because you're supposedly one of us now because of Tristan, it means you're cool, Justin," he said. "What are we, 12? Justin quipped before adding, "Why are you always such a bully, Blackwood?" His voice sounded calm and unbothered. Ethan mimicked him as he looked for a place to sit. "It's not bullying if it's a nudge toward the truth. Like the way you follow Jaden around with your eyes like a love-struck teenager," Ethan added. "It's a whole ladder up his ex." "So?" Alex defended. So you're on his side now? Don't think I can't plummet the two of you just because Nate is here and my hand still hurts," Ethan retorted. "Why do you assume you can beat me?" Justin quipped. "You feel confident enough to try out your threat, Blackwood?" Alex chipped in. Before Ethan could speak, Nathaniel interjected, "The ladies are having fun." The men all picked up their phones, including Ethan. Nathaniel glanced around with a subtle smirk before returning his attention to his phone. Aria had changed into a gold wrap dress, and the gilded fabric hugged her shape perfectly. Nathaniel allowed his eyes to travel down her figure, stopping at her chest, then the curve of her hips before returning to her face. His body reacted to hers and he suddenly wished the day was over. He longed for a skip button to fast forward to after the party, when he could finally enjoy some peace and quiet again. They sat there eating the food George kept bringing out. And each time, Nathaniel took his time to make sure nothing smelled off or looked unappealing before having a bite. He was so used to eating a selective diet from trusted sources that anything outside that felt like a potential threat. Taking a deep sigh, he coached himself mentally to be as adventurous as the others, and each time his eyes reverted to the live feed of Aria enjoying herself with the other ladies, he found himself missing her more. He decided to distract himself by focusing on something else. He sent a message to Tom, wanting to know the changes he had made to their stock distribution and ownership structure. Nathaniel knew the twins had 5% each, while he and Aria each held 25%. The remaining 40% was distributed among the other shareholders, but he wanted to adjust that. He wanted the triplets to have equal shares with the twins, so if each of his children had 5%, that would leave 25% remaining. Instead of Eli Darfield receiving the initial 20% allocated to his maternal grandfather, Nathaniel decided to reduce that to 5%, just like his children. This would leave 20% remaining. Tom's 20% would also be cut to 5%, leaving 15%. Nathaniel planned to use 10% of that remaining equity to be the only shares available to the current shareholders. The terms, however, wouldn't be as lenient as before. The final 5% would be available to the public, with restrictions. Nathaniel also wanted Andrew, Charles, Aidan, Anton, Will, Adam, Stephen, and the rest of his top 10 guards to express interest in the shares, not just for their investment in the publicly traded portion for dividends and capital gains. Above all, Nathaniel wanted Andrew to be involved, and he wouldn't mind if Jake had more shares for his family. He even considered giving young Ash a stake in the company. These were the men who had almost died protecting him over the years, and he knew they would continue to do so without a second thought, and extend the privilege to his children. Even if they went rogue in the future, or if Eli, Jake's son, turned out like his mother or grandfather, God forbid, Nathaniel would rest easy knowing that his children and legacy would be protected by this new structure. A smile tugged at Nathaniel's lips when Tom promptly replied. He nearly laughed out loud when he saw Tom's share distribution. What tugged at his heartstrings the most was that Tom had given himself 2%, only out of the floating shares, and did the same for Eli Darfield. He gave his children 10% each, except for Owen. Interestingly, Tom had given Owen 15% and took 10% from Arya to add to Nathaniel's share. The distribution was brutally clear. Tom wanted the shares and decisions to be exclusively for the Hawthornes. A thoughtful frown furrowed Nathaniel's brow at the percentage Tom had given Owen. A smile tugged at the corners of his lips. It seemed that Tom already saw something in the 7-year-old, and Nathaniel felt a surge of pride. If Tom could see it now, Nathaniel felt truly blessed. His children, especially Owen and Liam, didn't need his money. They were already trillionaires. But he needed them for his legacy, and Tom in some way could see that Owen could carry it forward. Nathaniel paused his fingers over the reply space, then, making up his mind, typed, "Now let's not be extreme." With a laughing emoji, he pressed send. He then sent his own proposal, which Tom rejected with about 20 angry emojis. Nathaniel couldn't help chuckling. He thought to himself that if Tom was ever tempted to betray him, it would near kill him. Tom was one man he trusted like a father, along with Andrew. They continued their back and forth until they reached an agreement, but Tom still wouldn't accept 5%. Nathaniel felt tears prick at the back of his eyes. "If you keep this up, I'm going to accept it and then gift it to Owen," Tom had threatened. Nathaniel chuckled as he read the reply. "Fine, so how do we get the shares back, though?" He had texted a reply. Tom sent an evil emoji. Nathaniel laughed out loud, knowing that if Tom had to kidnap every single one of the shareholders, he would. "Please, no kidnapping," Nathaniel quickly texted, knowing it wasn't beneath the old fox. "Can you share the joke?" Ethan asked, making Nathaniel look up from his phone to meet his gaze. "Your laughing is getting annoying," he added. Nathaniel glanced around for something to throw at him. Ethan, already familiar with Nathaniel's typical gesture, quickly got up from his seat, where he was a direct target, and moved to sit between Andrew and Charles. "Gentlemen, I hope you don't mind if I join you," Ethan muttered as he squeezed in. Andrew shook with laughter. "He looks for trouble and then runs," Alex jeered, earning a glare from Ethan. Everyone laughed. The group left for Marcus's place in the evening, with Jake taking over the drive from Andrew. As they turned off the lane leading away from Ian's house, Jake caught a glimpse of a truck parked by the side of the road. Though he didn't get a good look, Aidan, who had previously seen the truck responsible for Ethan's accident in New York, immediately recognized it. Without hesitation, he sent a message to Andrew. When Andrew's phone chimed in the passenger seat, he checked the message and let out a tired sigh. That was all Jake needed to know. One of them had spotted the truck too. Jake had hoped that the former Blackwoods getting bail might serve as a wake-up call, prompting them to rethink their actions instead of playing into Ian Blackwood's game. But it seemed Benedict, or whoever was inside that truck, was prepared to go down with their hardened resolve. Someone, or multiple someones, would end up 6 feet under, and both Nathaniel and Ian would make sure it wasn't Ethan. When they arrived at Marcus's place, they found Sheriff Logan waiting for them. After exchanging pleasantries, Nathaniel and the others proceeded inside. Jake noticed Andrew subtly passing a piece of paper to Sheriff Logan. The older man didn't look at it immediately, but smoothly slipped it into his pocket. Later, Jake saw him take out the paper along with his wallet. His expression remained unchanged as he read whatever information Andrew had given him, but he stepped aside to make 2 phone calls. Jake was certain one of them had to be to Ian Blackwood. Nathaniel hadn't planned for them to stay long at Marcus's. Their presence was just to ensure everyone had the sequence of the routine down before heading back to the ranch. Despite his eagerness to return home to Ariana, he wanted her to enjoy as much time as she wanted with her friends. The plan was to arrive only when the ladies were winding down from their day's activities. He thought the group was doing well in practice and figured they might perform even better on stage. Either way, whether they got it right or not, it would be either hilariously entertaining or unexpectedly impressive. His heart thumped against his ribs when Andrew announced it was time to leave. He placed a hand over his chest, chuckling and shaking his head at himself. "Want to share the joke?" Justin asked from his left, catching Nathaniel off guard. The guy usually kept his distance, so his sudden willingness to engage was surprising. For some reason, Nathaniel decided to be straightforward with him. "I can't wait to see my wife," he admitted. A flicker of pain flashed through Justin's eyes before he quickly masked it. "That's a good thing, man," he replied, lowering his gaze. Nathaniel surprised himself even more by reaching out and giving Justin a friendly pat on the shoulder. "I almost married a woman who had a one-night stand with my best friend just to get to me. Then tried to kill Ariana and kidnap my twins for ransom," he said quietly, watching as Justin's eyes widened in shock. Nodding in confirmation, Nathaniel cringed slightly. "Trust me, it happens to the best of us. But then, I got my real wife back. Don't let any bullshit, especially your own, stand in the way of what you want. You snooze, you lose." With that, Nathaniel walked away. Back at the ranch, sneaking into the marquee tent, standing on that stage and locking eyes with Ariana had been the most exhilarating thing he'd done in years. And the damn wait before he could finally hold her was almost physical torture. Afterward, lying there on that Persian rug, the heart she had put in his chest pounding, he replayed everything that had led to that moment. The thought of another man standing where he had stood, of her looking at someone else the way she had looked at him, exhumed that raw possessiveness in him again. But he would be the first to acknowledge it had all been worth it. Being in the tent with the other men, each with their own women, was entertaining. But since he and Ariana had fulfilled their roles as hosts, he figured it was time to take his wife home to their kids. Hearing her whisper, "I love you," in a tired but content tone, as they both drifted off to sleep in a real bed, brought a smile to his face. Tom's call woke him early. He had sent a message and was waiting for a reply. When Nathaniel didn't respond, he called instead. Nathaniel quickly got up, threw something on, and hurried to the gym, his designated space for taking early calls so he wouldn't disturb Ariana. "Check your message," was all Tom said before ending the call. Sighing, Nathaniel opened the message. Tom had arranged a business dinner instead of the planned auction, inviting the shareholders, including Gray, to one of his retreat homes in the Adirondack Mountains. He had scheduled it for 2 days after the Sylvan Ridge Carnival, meaning they'd have to leave Alaska immediately after the event, or first thing the next morning if they wanted any rest. Tom hadn't given him much choice, especially with the last line of his message. Gray was starting to rally support among the shareholders, and Tom wanted all the games shut down immediately. Nathaniel sent his agreement. Now they had just a few hours left to enjoy Sylvan Ridge. Now, stepping out of the room and seeing Aria swarmed by the other ladies, Nathaniel chuckled and continued on his way. The moment they spotted him, however, they all burst into giggles. He felt his face heat up. He figured he would never live that performance down. Raising a hand in a quiet salute, he avoided eye contact as he made his way toward the twins' room. "Thank you, Nate," Anna's voice rang out above the others, and Anita, the bloody woman, let out a whistle. "You're welcome, Pookie," Nathaniel replied to Anna. Then, turning to Anita, he added, "I'm going to keep an eye on you, troublemaker. That only made the ladies laugh harder." The door to the twins' room swung open, and Owen peered out with a frown. Nathaniel scooped him up and carried him back inside. "Why are they so giggly in the morning?" Owen asked, irritation lacing his voice. Nathaniel chuckled. "They probably saw some pet pictures they think are cute. You know how girls are," he replied with a grin. Nathaniel helped the twins with their baths, dressed them, and led them out of their room, guiding them down the hallway toward the stairs. Walking past the doorway of the triplets' room, voices of the ladies could still be heard, filtering faintly through the closed door as they recounted their ordeal with gentle laughter. As they passed by, Liam glanced toward the door while holding one of his father's hands but remained silent. Nathaniel looked down at him, finding his quietness unusual. "Are you okay, buddy?" he asked, his voice low and deep. Liam nodded and kept walking. "He's sometimes like this in the morning, Dad," Owen offered. "Okay, forgive me for not paying attention," Nathaniel replied, though he remained concerned. As they reached the stairs, he glanced at Liam again and noticed the boy looking around, his expression dull. Hoping to lift his spirits, he said, "What do you say we ask Tristan's dad about the carnival plans and maybe go check out the venue ourselves?" His heart lifted when Liam quickly looked up, meeting his gaze with a small smile before nodding. Nathaniel grinned and ruffled his hair before turning to Owen. "What do you say, Owen? Does that mean you're spending the day with us?" Owen asked, his gaze searching. "I don't see why not," Nathaniel replied. "I think it's going to be at Blue Ridge Ski Park," Liam chimed in. "That's the only place to ski in Sylvan Ridge." He shrugged. "Oh, have you two been there before?" Nathaniel asked with interest. Owen glanced across to Liam, who was walking on Nathaniel's other side. "You know you can tell me anything, both of you," Nathaniel added, hoping his suspicion was wrong. "The place is always packed with people from town, and Mum likes to avoid trouble," Owen said. Nathaniel sighed in understanding. "And we used to make our own slides," Owen quickly added. "Which is way better," Liam agreed, gesturing animatedly with his hands. When their dad continued glancing between them without commenting, Liam added, "But don't worry, Dad. We'll make our first time there at the venue memorable." He nodded, then smirked. Nathaniel chuckled, thinking that perhaps Owen was right. Liam wasn't unusually quiet, just not as bubbly as usual. But to be sure, he discreetly touched the back of Liam's neck to check his temperature. He felt slightly warmer than Owen. Nodding to himself, he made a mental note to mention it to Arya. Then, upon reaching the stairs landing, he ushered the twins toward the dining table. For a change, he was the first to arrive for breakfast with the twins. Smiling to himself, he hoped his men hadn't been having too much fun and forgotten they were supposed to be on guard. "Good morning, sir. Master Liam. Master Owen," Miss Jonas greeted from the adjoining door leading to the kitchen. "Good morning, Miss Jonas," the twins chorused before their father could respond. Nathaniel raised a hand in acknowledgement. "Enjoying your vacation, Miss Jonas?" The older woman chuckled. "Indeed," she replied as she walked closer. "I'm sure your vacation has been quite adventurous, boss. Far more thrilling than mine. I mean, there's a rumor that you had quite a night," she added, a teasing gleam in her eyes. "You shouldn't listen to rumors, Miss Jonas. Nothing good ever comes from them," Nathaniel replied smoothly. "But of course," Miss Jonas said with a proper ladylike demeanor that almost made Nathaniel laugh. The bloody old busybody. "It's a new day. Perhaps more adventures await. Except it's snowing again," she added with a sigh, glancing to the side window. Nathaniel chuckled. "Don't worry, Miss Jonas. We should be heading home soon. Andrew will let you know when to start packing." Miss Jonas let out a relieved sigh. "Don't you like it here, Miss Jonas?" Liam chimed in. Before she could respond, Owen added, "Big Mama said the endless winter can sometimes be depressing." Nathaniel and Miss Jonas chuckled. "Ah, from the mouths of babes," the older woman mused before turning back to Liam. "There's nothing as beautiful as an endless plain of white snow. It's just our luck we arrived when it wouldn't stop snowing." They spent a few more minutes exchanging banter before Miss Jonas skillfully redirected the conversation. "And what would you two like for breakfast?" she asked Owen and Liam. "Pancakes!" the twins shouted in unison. Liam, unable to contain his excitement, began wiggling in his chair, doing a little shimmy that made Nathaniel, Owen, and Miss Jonas chuckle. Nathaniel smirked. "Just pancakes?" he asked as one of the maids brought him herbal tea. Before the twins could respond, Miss Jonas interjected. "How about we make it a full breakfast? You could have pancakes with eggs, bacon, or maybe some fresh fruit on the side." The twins cheered. "Oh, bacon!" Owen added quickly. "And honey, a lot of honey," Liam threw in, grinning. "And some strawberries too," Owen added, nodding eagerly. "I want strawberries too, Miss Jonas," Liam interjected. Miss Jonas laughed, shaking her head. All right. Pancakes with bacon, honey, and strawberries. Anything else, gentlemen?" The twins exchanged a look before Liam added, "Maybe a little whipped cream." Miss Jonas chuckled. "Of course," she replied with a bright smile. With the children sorted, she turned to Nathaniel. "And what about you, sir?" she asked. "I can prepare some oatmeal with diced fruit, an omelette, or perhaps something else to your liking." Nathaniel leaned back slightly, considering. "That all sounds good, but I think I'll go with the omelette, maybe with some toast and a bit of fruit on the side." "Excellent choice, sir," Miss Jonas said approvingly before heading to the kitchen. Just as Miss Jonas walked away, Justin entered with Tristan. When the twins saw Tristan, they eagerly beckoned him over. The boy hurried across the room. "We're having pancakes," Liam announced. "Can I have pancakes too?" Tristan asked, looking at Nathaniel. Nathaniel tapped the tip of Tristan's nose and said, "Of course." The boy grinned and quickly took the empty seat next to Owen. "Good morning, Liam." "Good morning, Owen," Justin greeted, waving at them. "Good morning, Uncle Justin," the twins chorused in reply. "Oh, I see I've been upgraded to Uncle's status," Justin mused to himself with a pleased grin. Nathaniel overheard and chuckled. "Morning, Nate," Justin greeted him. "Good morning to you too, Justin. Trust you had a memorable night," Nathaniel said in a low, teasing tone. The other man beamed with a broad smile. Poor bastard, Nathaniel thought. He was glad Ethan wasn't there. He would have needled Justin to death. Just then, the door to the dining room opened and Jaden strolled in. Upon seeing Nathaniel and Justin, heat rushed to her cheeks and neck. Nathaniel watched as her face bloomed with color and chuckled. "I had a great night, Nate. Thanks to you, I might actually have another shot at happiness," Justin murmured, though it was loud enough for Nathaniel to hear. Nathaniel raised a hand, motioning for Jaden to come over, silently thanking Justin's lucky stars that Ethan wasn't present. "You're welcome, Justin. Glad I could help," Nathaniel replied. Soon enough, more people began to stream into the dining room. When Ethan walked in, his eyes immediately found Jaden in the corner, talking to Jake's girlfriend. Before his gaze shifted to Justin, Nathaniel caught his attention. He shook his head and made a slashing motion across his jaw, signaling for Ethan to leave the couple alone. Ethan grinned but walked over to join him instead. Alex entered shortly after, walking in alone. Nathaniel knew his girl was upstairs with Aria. The two joined him and Alex gave him a pat on the back. "Thanks for yesterday, man, you rock," he said. Nathaniel stood, embraced him, then shook his hand before sitting back down. Andrew walked in next, his footsteps clearly audible in the room. Nathaniel was sure his efficient head of security had already started clearing away any remnants of their antics from the night before. Andrew moved toward him with purpose. Nathaniel stood to meet him before he could get too close. Andrew smiled and extended his hand. "I'm grateful, boss," he said. Nathaniel pulled him into a hug instead. "You're welcome. Just have a word with Annie for me, all right?" he said, laughter filling the room as he added, "And no more ideas from her." "Sure, boss," Andrew replied with a chuckle. Nathaniel then turned to Alex. "I know Anna probably had a hand in it, but Anna, I can handle," he added. Alex burst into laughter and soon everyone joined in. "Are you scared of Anita, Nate?" Ethan teased. "Ask Andrew about the conversation we overheard some time back between my wife and Anita when she thought Andrew made Anita cry," Nathaniel replied with a smirk. Andrew started laughing. Nathaniel continued, "It's not Anita I'm wary of, it's my brown-eyed witch." The room filled with laughter. The laughter grew louder when Andrew shared exactly what they had overheard. "They were discussing paralyzing you?" Justin asked in disbelief. "Yup," Andrew replied, and everyone laughed again. The rest of the ladies trickled downstairs just as the men were finishing up. When Nathaniel stood, Ethan walked around the table to join him. Leaning in closer, he said, "We need to talk, man." Nathaniel nodded, hoping whatever Ethan had to say wasn't related to what Ian had done. Justin, standing aside, approached Nathaniel and Ethan. "Sorry to disturb you, man, but may I have a word with you, Nate, please?" Justin asked. "Okay," Nathaniel replied, meeting Ethan's gaze before turning his attention back to Justin. "I kind of promised to take the children to check out the ski resort you mentioned, Justin," Nathaniel began. "Great, we can talk on the way there," Justin said. Ethan, sensing the seriousness in Justin's expression, didn't make any jokes. "Is that okay with you, Ethan?" Nathaniel asked. "Sure," Ethan replied, then looked at Alex, who had gotten up to join them. "I think you might want to come too. This concerns you as well," Ethan said. Alex nodded, meeting Nathaniel's gaze, searching for clues. Nathaniel shrugged. "Liam, Owen, Tristan," Nathaniel called to the boys, getting their attention. "Come on, let's get you more jackets," he added. The boys cheered in excitement. When Aria crossed the room to join Nathaniel, he pressed a quick kiss to her lips before she had a chance to greet the others. Nathaniel then pulled her aside and told her about the impromptu excursion to the ski area for the carnival. "I promise we won't be long, 2 hours max. That should give you and Evangeline time to settle into your morning routine because I need Liam checked." "I think he's coming down with a cold," he said. Aria gasped and looked in Liam's direction. "Liam, honey, come here," Aria called. Liam hurried over to join his mum and dad. Aria drew him close, pressing her hand to his forehead. She could feel that his skin was slightly warmer than usual. Liam, looking suspicious and dismayed, quickly said, "I'm fine, Mom, Dad. I promise, I'm fine," he added, with an overly bright smile. He couldn't fall sick when he had an important payback to orchestrate. He couldn't trust Owen to handle it the way he would. Maybe this was God disagreeing with his plans for revenge? He thought to himself. Then he considered, "Nah, God doesn't like bullies. That's why he created naughty lists for Santa to punish bad boys and girls. Of course he approves." "I know you're saying that because you don't want to miss going to the carnival, but we still have time," Aria said. "So follow your dad, come back early, and let me have a good look at you, deal?" "Okay, Mum," Liam agreed, thinking that sounded reasonable. Nathaniel picked him up, holding him close to his body. Once the children were dressed in their full protective winter gear, they headed out. Nathaniel wore a white turtleneck cardigan over slightly fitted suede pants, topped with a long coat. He also had on leather gloves, a beanie, and a thick scarf wrapped around his neck. Nathaniel carried Liam, Jake carried Owen, and Jaden carried Tristan as they all made their way outside. Once inside the vehicle, they realized they couldn't speak freely with the children present. Nathaniel then said, "We should have a moment once we get there." Justin agreed, and Ethan and Alex nodded. With Andrew driving, they set off. Soon enough, the ski area came into view, with a log cabin looking seemingly buried in the center of the expansive plain. Nathaniel took in the view from the hilly road to the valley of snowy plain. The snow-covered slopes stretched endlessly in every direction, shimmering under the golden sunlight. Towering pine trees, their branches heavy with fresh snow, framed the scene perfectly, adding a touch of deep green to the otherwise white expanse. Beyond, the jagged peaks of the mountains loomed in the background, their icy ridges casting long, blue-tinted shadows across the landscape. Skiers and snowboarders carved their way down the slopes, leaving crisp trails in the powdery snow. Near the cabin, a lively crowd gathered, some warming up with hot drinks on the terrace, others adjusting their gear before heading back onto the runs. The wooden beams of the cabin, dusted with snow, gave it a cozy, welcoming feel, with wisps of smoke curling from its chimney. The children were right. The place was packed with townspeople. Even from a distance, he could hear the muffled sounds of laughter, the swish of skis, and the occasional cheer as someone made a perfect run. Liam, peering out of the window alongside Owen and Tristan, darted his eyes about the famous ski resort, taking in how the wooden benches were stationed close to the tall, dense vegetation, creating a cozy corner for families to rest. Owen was more focused on the overhead ski lift, its sturdy metal frame carrying bundled-up skiers and snowboarders high above the slopes. He let his eyes follow the unending cables, which stretched across the sky, supporting the suspended chairs that swayed slightly as they transported riders to the top of the snow-covered mountain. Meanwhile, Liam thought the place really looked like a fun arena. What caught his attention most, however, was how conveniently close the dense vegetation was to the sitting area. He figured the scene would be perfect for what he had planned. He grinned, then let out a loud sneeze. "Oh," Owen said in dismay. Nathaniel immediately reached for him, cupping his small face. The little rascal grinned even as his nose started to drip. "He's going to pass it to me," Owen bemoaned dramatically, making everyone laugh. "I'm perfectly fine," Liam insisted. Nathaniel pressed his palm to Liam's forehead and noticed he had grown warmer. He immediately regretted bringing him on the trip. "Dad, put a face mask on him before he gives it to me," Owen added. Okay, on it," Nathaniel said. Jake handed him a face mask, and he carefully put it on Liam. "We should wear them for all three of them," Justin suggested with a grin. "Is it because you think I'll catch it?" Tristan asked. "No, just as a precaution," Justin replied. "What do you have to worry about? I'm the one who's his twin. He falls sick, I fall sick. He sneezes, I sneeze. That's the story of my life," Owen grumbled, clearly displeased. Nathaniel and the other adults fought back laughter. "Stop being melodramatic, it's just a regular cold," Liam countered dismissively, determined to downplay his fever. "Do you want us to head back?" Andrew asked with concern. "No," Liam replied before his dad could. "We're already here, and I want to look around at least." Seeing Nathaniel hesitate, he gave him a pleading look and added, "Daddy, please, just a minute, a second, a semi-second. Let me escort them, we won't take more than 5 minutes," Jaden offered. "I'll come with you," Aiden said, stepping out of the car and reaching for Liam. Liam let him pick him up, but immediately asked to be put down. Owen did the same with the guard carrying him. "You can't carry us over there, it's social suicide," Owen explained to his uncles. Aiden and the others laughed. "But can we at least hold hands?" Aiden asked, feigning interest. "No, Uncle Aiden," Liam replied with a frown before promptly slipping his gloved hands into the pockets of his jacket. Owen did the same, giving his uncles a pointed look. Aiden and the others chuckled. Raising his hands in defeat, he quipped, "All right, my apologies, gentlemen." Meanwhile, Tristan quietly pleaded with Jaden to be put down, thinking that being carried by a girl would be far more damaging to his dignity. Nathaniel and the other men got down from the jeep and began trailing after the children, though at a considerable distance. Nathaniel kept his eyes on Liam, watching closely for any signs of his condition worsening. He silently hoped it was just a simple cold, as Liam had insisted. Justin fell into step with Nathaniel, while Alex and Ethan followed. Andrew and Jake lagged behind, keeping an eye on their surroundings. "I told Mr. Hill, I want to sell my business here and my house," Justin said, drawing the other men's attention. "You're letting them run you out of your hometown, Graham? Just when I thought you were finally growing a pair," Ethan needled. Justin chuckled, unfazed by the jab. "I'm not letting them run me off, Ethan. I just need a change of scenery. I've been here too long." His voice trailed off before he gave Nathaniel a sidelong glance and added, "I'd like some pointers on what to do with the money once the sale goes through. Plus, Justin and I would be like strangers in a foreign land in New York. It would help to know we have you in our corner, and that Tristan would be welcome to continue this budding friendship." There was a brief silence as Nathaniel considered his request. He understood that Justin wasn't just asking for continued hospitality. He was asking to be considered a trusted ally, someone with access to his home and family. "I need to know you beyond just being Ethan and my wife's high school friend Justin before I grant you that kind of access to my home. As for Tristan being friends with the twins, that's up to them. He will always be welcome, that I assure you. As for investments..." Nathaniel paused and turned to Jake. "Are you still interested in that holding company you mentioned?" Jake nodded. "Very much, boss. In fact, I was wondering, since Justin is an architect and a knowledgeable real estate agent, and now he's somewhat entangled with Jaden," Jake started. Justin could feel his face heating up at the mention of Jaden. The two of them had done several scandalous things to each other the night before, and it was a bit embarrassing to meet her gaze without his mind immediately diving into the gutter. "I'm thinking we should have him and Mr. Hill join forces to buy the lands surrounding the Hawthorne estate," Jake continued, crouching to draw in the snow with his fingers. Then, those of us interested in investing and settling down while keeping our jobs can do so by buying and living in buildings developed around the estate. That way, over time, we could bring the entire district under our control. Jake looked up at Nathaniel before adding, Justin will have a job to keep him busy for years, and he'll be close. The project would be under the proposed holding company, which would handle both real estate and equity shares for our clients. Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully, his eyes on the diagram Jake had drawn in the snow. That's a really great idea, Alex chimed in. Are people like me allowed to invest in something like this? Of course, Jake replied. You and Blackwood are more than welcome. The holding company can manage the investment while you and Blackwood are away. What if I want to live there? Ethan suddenly asked, drawing everyone's attention. Ethan darted his gaze between Alex and Nathaniel before announcing, You win, I'm staying. I want a partner to open an industrial chemical company, and I want to remain Eisler's man, permanently. A moment of stunned silence followed before Nathaniel and Alex rushed Ethan, lifting him up in celebration. Ethan groaned, half mortified, as Nathaniel and Alex lifted him off the ground in celebration. All right, put me down, you idiots. We're not in college anymore. The two ignored him, holding him up a little longer just to mess with him before finally setting him back down. College or not, you lost a bet, Alex reminded him with a smug grin. And you know what that means. You have to pay up, he said, gesturing with his hands. The other men laughed, enjoying Ethan's predicament. Ethan sighed, brushing off his coat. Okay, fine, I'll pay up. But can we at least talk like civilized people now? Alex scoffed. Really? Now you want civility? Nathaniel chuckled, pleased with himself that he had set Ethan up and the arrogant peacock had fell for it. Ethan groaned but couldn't help smirking. Nathaniel extended a hand for a handshake, but the moment Ethan took it, Nathaniel yanked him into a firm hug. Welcome home, Nathaniel said. Alex grinned and joined in, clapping Ethan on the back. I suppose this means Sterndale will be staying too, Andrew probed with a smile. I have to, or Ethan will never let me live it down, he replied. Nathaniel extended a handshake to Alex, and after shaking hands, they pulled each other into a brief hug, exchanging pats on the back. The other men watched with amused expressions as the three friends shared the moment. Then, one by one, they started clapping and congratulating Ethan, sealing the decision he had just made. He took a bow, drawing laughter from the others. After a few pleasantries, Nathaniel said, All right, how do we go about this? Justin was taken aback. Jake had been talking about $1 trillion venture, and Nathaniel Hawthorne had just casually accepted it as if it were nothing. Wait. Didn't that mean he had a job? He gaped. Is this what being friends with him looks like? His heart pounded at the endless possibilities that Hawthorne was offering him so casually. Justin chuckled, a bit nervously, still struggling to process Nathaniel's reaction to Jake Darfield's proposal. You don't think there should be an extensive meeting after the preliminary findings and report? He asked, drawing Nathaniel's attention. Are you nervous about handling such a major project, Graham? Nathaniel probed, raising an eyebrow. What? No. Justin's voice trailed off as he swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how constricting his collar felt under Nathaniel's intense scrutiny. He had met plenty of intimidating people before, but Nathaniel had an unsettling presence. He didn't even have to say much to be terrifying. I'm competent, I have experience, and of course I can. He paused, cleared his throat and added, I can handle a project of this scale. For some reason, he then crossed his arms over his chest. Breathe, Graham. Ethan needled. Alex chuckled, deciding to take pity on him. Mr. Hill is preliminary findings with legs. That's why Jake is pairing you with him. He'll handle all the legal paperwork while you focus on your responsibilities, Alex clarified. You can manage that, right? He added, watching him closely. Yes, Justin replied simply, nodding. He silently prayed that none of them noticed that his hands were trembling, or that he was deliberately avoiding Nathaniel's gaze. You're not the only one stepping into uncharted territory, Graham, Jake said. The last time I was a public policy and law student at the Fells Institute of Government Penn Law was years ago. Since then, I've been nothing but a Marine, And yet here I am, preparing to take on the leadership of a financial holding company, even if it's just a facade. Who said it was going to be? Nathaniel interjected, finally shifting his gaze away from Justin, allowing him to breathe again. Andrew chuckled as Jake sighed, "Boss," his tone carrying a hint of warning. "You just need a bit of a refresher to fit perfectly into the role. Otherwise, who's going to teach Justin about proper work ethics?" Nathaniel remarked. Andrew burst out laughing. "Work ethics?" Justin repeated, intrigued. "You're going to make money, travel, build connections, but you're going to earn every bit of it," Jake said with a knowing smirk. "Oh, I'm not afraid of work," Justin responded. Nathaniel chuckled. The others laughed. Andrew observed as Justin's eyes darted between Nathaniel and the other men, likely trying to understand what they found amusing. He figured Justin would learn soon enough. Under Nathaniel, there were no breaks until the job was done. "Can we discuss my proposal now that your new buddy Justin is sorted?" Ethan asked. Nathaniel shook with laughter. Alex groaned. Andrew and Jake chuckled. Justin wasn't sure how to react. He only hoped Ethan wouldn't resent him for being somewhat absorbed into their clique. He thought about speaking with Ethan later to make sure he understood that he had no intention of forcing himself into Nathaniel's favor. The whirlwind of events had left him shaken. He had no idea that Jake had ever thought of him in that way. "What are we going to discuss first?" "Equity shares. How much is on the table?" Alex probed. "Gentlemen, I don't talk shares unless Tom is present," Nathaniel quipped. "But you've agreed to be a partner," Ethan pressed with keen interest. Nathaniel looked at Jake, who groaned, understanding that his responsibilities as the head of the holding company had officially begun. "Don't forget you asked for this," Andrew teased. Jake chuckled. "How many partners are we looking at?" Jake asked. "I was thinking of handling this with Nathaniel and Alex, but I wouldn't mind bringing in more partners, as long as we don't bring in people who will start stressing us out," Ethan said. "How many shares are you hoping to retain?" Jake asked again. "Well, I think we should allocate equity shares based on investment," Ethan replied. "I understand that means Nate would hold the majority shares, but I don't mind," Ethan said. "You will when the company gains traction, and you realize this was your idea from the start," Nathaniel stated matter-of-factly. "What? You think I could be greedy when it comes to you, knowing full well I'm here because of you?" Ethan replied, visibly offended. "Correction, Ethan. You are here because of you. I didn't go to Dubai with you. I merely pointed you in the right direction and you made significant progress on your own. Let's be clear, I don't invest my time, money, or effort in idiots. You, Ethan, built this. You made yourself what you are," Nathaniel said, his voice calm yet carrying a fervent intensity that was captivating. Ethan clenched his jaw, moved by what Nathaniel was saying because he knew it wasn't entirely true. Nathaniel might not have accompanied him to Dubai, but his connections and mere association had opened doors Ethan couldn't begin to measure. "Now, if we're going to do business together, here's how it's going to play out. You and Alex will handle the business proposal, which will be presented to Jake. In this setup, Jake represents both himself and me. Jake will sit down with you two to assess the capital needed to launch. The shares will be valued accordingly. If Jake is interested in acquiring 40% for himself and me, he will do so, provided the remaining shares can be managed between you, Ethan, and Alex. If not, Jake would propose acquiring more shares and bringing in Andrew. If Andrew's involvement resolves the funding gap, we stop there. Each partner will receive dividends proportional to their shares. However, let me be clear, I'm not taking 50%. That wouldn't be fair to you," Nathaniel concluded. Ethan nodded, then he extended his hand. Nathaniel took it and the two shared a handshake and a brief hug. Alex joined in. Justin found himself viewing Nathaniel with a newfound respect. His response was firm, strategic, and subtly authoritative. He asserted control over the conversation without resorting to aggression. His tone conveyed an understanding of fairness while making it clear that his influence carried significant weight. By defining Ethan's role in his own success, he emphasized that Ethan had earned his position rather than being granted it. This distinction altered the balance of power, reinforcing that Nathaniel saw himself as a mentor rather than a benefactor. Justin also appreciated how Nathaniel acknowledged the risk of resentment if Ethan later realized he had given up too much control. Nathaniel then structured the deal, defining clear roles and responsibilities while remaining open to additional partners. Justin suspected he was beginning to truly see a glimpse of why Nathaniel was so successful. The sound of children chattering as they approached made the men stop their conversation. Nathaniel shifted his focus to his children, his eyes landing on Liam, who was being carried by Aidan. He started to move toward them, not realizing that Jake had followed him. "Dad, Liam isn't feeling well," Owen said. "I'm fine," Liam replied, his voice sounding irritated. As Nathaniel stepped forward to carry Liam, Jake quickly took over, lifting him and walking toward the Jeep. Nathaniel smiled and scooped up Owen instead. Because Jake was carrying Liam, he didn't take the front passenger seat. Instead, he sat in the back while Ethan took the front. On their way back to the house, their security escort flanked the Jeep all the way to the ranch gate. Ethan found that odd. He knew they had enemies, but he didn't think the situation was serious enough to warrant this level of protection. The thought crossed his mind that it might have something to do with Ian's estranged family, but he quickly dismissed it. Diana and her children were undoubtedly unhinged, but he figured they had enough sense of self-preservation to know that going against Nathaniel was a death sentence. As the Jeep rolled to a stop in front of the house, Jake pulled the door open and stepped out, still carrying Liam. Ash, who had come to meet them, immediately noticed how Jake was holding Liam. His brows furrowed in concern as he hurried closer. "Is he okay?" he asked. "He's fine. Just a simple cold, we hope," Jake replied. Liam nodded in agreement. Arya, who had been waiting for their return, stepped onto the porch. The sight of the children now wearing face masks and Jake carrying Liam alarmed her. She immediately called out to Evangeline. Nathaniel got down from the Jeep with Owen in his arms, and Arya descended the stairs to meet him. "How is Liam's temperature? I hope it isn't rising," she asked with keen interest. "It is, Dr. Hawthorne," Aidan answered, and Nathaniel nodded to confirm when Arya met his gaze. Arya frowned with worry. "What about his breathing?" Evangeline asked as she stepped down from the porch as well. "He is breathing fine," Nathaniel promptly responded. "That's good," Arya said, and joined Jake. Anita, Anna, Miss Everly, Miss Bella, Isla, and Noria milled after her, all curious and concerned about what was happening to Liam. "Let's take him to the infirmary," Evangeline suggested. "Good idea. He can be tested there," Anita chimed in, quickly following Jake, Arya, and Evangeline as they headed in the direction of the makeshift clinic. "Dad? Owen?" Liam called from over Jake's shoulder. "We are right behind you, buddy," Nathaniel promptly replied. "We're coming, Liam," Owen interjected. Justin was about to follow the group with Tristan when Rowan, who had just stepped outside, stopped him. "I think it's best you keep Tristan away until we know for sure what's going on," he said before hurrying after the others. "But Owen is going too, Daddy," Tristan quietly protested. Justin hesitated. He didn't want to remind his son that he was still under observation from his previous illness and couldn't risk catching any form of flu. Sensing his hesitation, Jaden reached out to take Tristan into her arms. Their eyes met and she held Justin's gaze. "That's because they're twins. They share a special bond," Jaden said, finally breaking eye contact to smile at Tristan before looking back at Justin. Jaden knew she had been acting out of character around Justin for the past few days, but she couldn't figure out how to maintain her distance from a man who had no hesitation in being vulnerable with her. Or was it something else? "Can we put him with Ian, though?" Evangeline asked with concern. "No, but we can take his blood samples there before bringing him back to the house," Rowan replied promptly. "Do we need to take his blood samples? It looks like a common cold to me," Arya said, raising her hand to feel Liam's forehead. "We might, just to be thorough," Rowan responded. Arya smiled as Liam lifted his face to glower at Rowan. The other man grinned at him. "I suggest that instead of taking him back to the main house after his test, we take him to my cottage. That way, he would be easily accessible to the doctors and close to the infirmary," Jake proposed. "That's a good idea," Rowan acknowledged. "Where's William?" Nathaniel asked, knowing he was the most experienced diagnostician among them, aside from Evangeline, who was the ideal doctor to care for Liam. Nathaniel preferred that William be present to work alongside Evangeline. "He's with Mr. Ian Blackwood, boss," Ash quickly replied from the back. Nathaniel nodded in acknowledgement. Upon arriving at the infirmary, Aria, Evangeline, Sterling, Yen, and Anita followed Jake inside with Liam. Dr. Williams, standing at the foot of Ian's bed, looked up as Jake entered. He smiled briefly, assuming Liam was up to his usual mischief. "He's cold and feverish," Aria informed Dr. Williams, causing his smile to fade. He immediately set Ian's medical chart down on the table beside the bed and moved toward Jake, who carefully laid Liam on the spare bed. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," Aria greeted, with Anita echoing the sentiment. "Good morning, Aria, Anita," Ian responded with a faint smile, his gaze shifting between them before settling on Liam, his brows knitted with concern. "Is it the flu?" he asked. "We're here to find out," Anita replied. Across the room, Jake assisted Dr. Williams in removing Liam's layers of clothing, exposing his small chest. Nathaniel, still holding Owen, stood near the foot of the bed so Liam could see them. He thought his son looked so fragile, barely able to keep his eyes open. Nathaniel had no idea what Owen picked up from his expression, or perhaps he simply sensed his worry, because the little boy wrapped his arms around his neck and whispered, "Don't worry, Dad, he'll be fine." Nathaniel felt his heart tighten with emotion at his son's attempt to comfort him. "You know, you really are a gift," Nathaniel murmured, his eyes softening with a smile. "Oh, I know, I'm the best you've got, Dad," Owen replied. Nathaniel was momentarily caught off guard when Owen added, "Liam is definitely going to give us both grey hairs. Let's hope you and Mom did better with the triplets." Nathaniel couldn't help but laugh. He shook with amusement, pressing his forehead against Owen's as he cupped the back of his head. Andrew, who was nearby and had overheard Owen's remark, chuckled quietly. Meanwhile, Evangeline returned to the bedside with a thermometer, leaning over, demonstrating its use. "Ah," she said, opening her mouth to show Liam. He copied her, a faint tug at the corner of his lips. Nathaniel smiled, knowing that if Liam felt more like himself, he would object to being treated like a baby, especially with the female doctors around. As the thermometer remained in Liam's mouth for 45 seconds, Dr. Williams pressed his stethoscope to Liam's chest. "Take a deep breath in," he instructed. Liam complied, though his breaths were faint and uneven. "And out." Dr. Williams listened carefully, repeating the process several times. Once the thermometer beeped, Evangeline removed it and read the temperature. 102.4 degrees Fahrenheit, she announced with concern. "That's high." Dr. Williams nodded and set aside his stethoscope. "There's some congestion in his chest, likely a respiratory infection," he observed. Evangeline gently brushed Liam's hair back. "We need to run a few quick tests, Bud, just to see what's going on, all right?" she warned in a low, warm tone. Liam barely nodded, the fever beginning to take its toll. Dr. Williams prepared a nasal swab while Evangeline held the tongue depressor for a throat swab. "I know this part isn't fun, my knight," Aria said, crouching beside the bed, her voice soft and gentle. "But you've got this. Just be brave for a few seconds, okay, honey?" Liam blinked and swallowed hard but remained still. Evangeline quickly took the throat swab, followed by Dr. Williams with the nasal swab. Liam scrunched his nose but cooperated. "You did great, kiddo," Jake reassured him. As soon as Dr. Williams stepped back, Rowan moved closer to the bed with a blood sample kit. "Liam, we need to take a little blood now, okay?" he explained. "Just a quick pinch." Liam barely reacted as Dr. Rowan skillfully drew the necessary samples. Once done, Jake gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. "Tough as ever, bud," he said, trying to encourage him. The corners of Liam's lips tweaked into a semblance of a smile. Evangeline promptly recorded the findings in Liam's medical chart before turning to face Nathaniel, just as Aria stepped up beside him. "Examination complete, sir. Dr. Hawthorne," she stated, shifting her gaze between the two in acknowledgement. Her blue eyes reflected respect. "We'll get the test results soon. But for now, Liam needs fluids, rest, and medication to reduce the fever," she said as she walked to the medicine cabinet to retrieve the necessary prescriptions and pass them to Anita. "We have to make sure he stays hydrated and rests as much as possible," she added. Jake took that to mean the doctors were done with Liam. He stepped closer to help him wear back his tops, and Aria joined him to wrap Liam up with a blanket. Dr. Williams patted Liam's blanket-covered shoulder. "Hang in there, champ. We'll get you feeling better in no time," he assured. Jake carried Liam again, and as he moved to walk past Nathaniel and Owen, Liam reached out to touch his father. Nathaniel took the small hand in his free one, pressed the open palm to his cheek, and followed Jake. Aria, watching the scene, smiled to herself. Meanwhile, Justin was still dwelling on Jake's proposal. He considered heading home to grab some of his work tools so he could start coming up with design ideas. He also realized he needed to pack more of Tristan's clothes, as well as his own, rather than relying on Aria to handle it all. That thought reminded him to at least gather the essentials for himself and Tristan and have them sent to him in New York. The idea of that led him to another issue: accommodation. He would need a place, preferably close to the Hawthornes, and he shuddered at what that might cost him. His gaze shifted toward Ash as the young man stepped out of the infirmary. Justin wondered if Ash knew the movers Ethan had used to evict his father's former family. Perhaps they could help him as well. Just as he moved to approach Ash, Jake emerged from the infirmary carrying Liam, with Nathaniel following closely behind, still holding Owen. Justin paused mid-stride. "Please tell me it's just a simple cold," Justin called out, not addressing anyone in particular. "It hasn't been determined yet," Jake replied. "Hang in there, buddy," Justin said to Liam. The little boy hesitantly waved. Anna, Alex, Noria, Isla, and Ethan, who had been waiting outside, joined Nathaniel. Noria stepped closer and gently tugged at Liam's free hand when he glanced in her direction. She gave him a warm smile. "Get well soon, okay, sweetie," she said softly. Liam nodded before resting his head back against Jake's neck. Jake, cupping the back of Liam's neck, noted that his temperature seemed to be rising. Concerned, he quickened his pace, thinking the sooner they got Liam settled, the sooner he could start his medication. Sensing Jake's urgency, Nathaniel matched his stride. Alex, Ethan, Isla, and Anna imitated the act, while Anita followed closely behind, with Evangeline and the rest of the group. Aria, wanting to catch up as she exited the infirmary, broke into a jog. Justin was still unsure whether to make a quick trip home or wait. He remained undecided when Jaden suddenly appeared beside him. "Have they figured out what's wrong with Liam?" she asked, her voice soft and mellowed. "I think Rowan and Dr. Yen went to run some tests," Justin replied, casting her a sidelong glance. Giving her a sidelong glance, he was reminded that Jaden worked for Nathaniel Hawthorne. Although he wasn't sure for how long she'd been employed by him, he thought she might be able to clarify Nathaniel's earlier comment about his work culture. "Jaden?" he said, drawing her attention. A flicker of curiosity crossed her eyes as she turned toward him. "I might be joining you in working for Nate soon, if he doesn't change his mind," Justin admitted. Jaden turned fully to face him, giving him her full attention. "In what capacity?" she asked, intrigued. "Architecture," Justin answered, before explaining what had happened when she had left with the children back at the ski resort. "That's impressive, Justin." "Congratulations," Jaden said with a warm smile, clearly happy for him. "Thank you," he replied, giving her a keen scrutiny. She sounded like she was happy for him, not for them, as if she didn't see them as a unit yet. He figured it was a good thing he had left out the part where Jake had mentioned her and had spoken of them as if they were already a couple. Justin knew he and Jaden hadn't defined their relationship yet, even though he had expressed wanting more. Despite their lack of restraint when it came to each other, she hadn't really given him a chance to talk about what he truly meant. He wanted her to understand that when he said he wanted more, it wasn't just about sex. He decided to give her time. They had only just met after all, but deep down, he sincerely hoped she felt the same way. He wanted something deeper, a real connection, rather than remaining just part-time lovers. "I know you work in security for Nate, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I need a little insight into what's expected of me," he said. "Nate mentioned Jake teaching me the Hawthorne work ethic, their culture, and I think that means I need to take initiative." He offered a sheepish grin, thinking if he was right, that would automatically activate more fears. Like, what if Nate and Jake hate all his ideas? "That's easy to answer," Jaden said with a smile. "You've seen how Andrew works without needing to be told what to do." Justin's eyes widened in alarm. "Please don't tell me I have to be like Andrew," he said, horrified. Jaden chuckled. "Sorry, but you asked." "Oh man," Justin muttered. dragging his hands down his face before running them through his hair. "Even Andrew's own men call him a cyborg, you know," he quipped. Jaden laughed. "Apart from taking initiative, you have to be intentional about everything you do, making sure things run smoothly without any issues. I'm sure you know how blunt he can be," she said with a teasing smile. Justin chuckled. "He's not going to worry about sparing your feelings," she added, grinning. "I should probably go grab my tools then," Justin said with a grimace. "Do you mind watching Tristan? I need to make a quick run home." Jaden remained silent for a moment, digesting that decision. While her primary responsibility was guarding Tristan, she was also aware of the ongoing situation with the Blackwoods, who were bent on getting back at Ethan. And then there were the Andersons. It didn't seem like Justin truly understood the situation with his ex-in-laws. Otherwise, why would he think he could dash anywhere unprotected, especially after the humiliation he had put them through? She was certain the Andersons were the kind of people who shifted blame rather than accept their own mistakes, and from what she could tell, Justin was at the center of their recent misfortunes. They might not seek direct retaliation, but his ex-wife, Pamela, had already shown she was willing to put their son through almost anything just to keep Justin from winning. Jaden thought it was naive of him to assume they would simply let him walk away unchallenged. "Why don't we come with you?" Jaden suggested with a warm smile. "Owen will probably stay by Liam's side, and Tristan won't enjoy being stuck with just me for company," she added with a small laugh. Justin chuckled. "I know what you mean. I don't think he finds my company all that exciting anymore either," he replied with a grin. Jaden smiled. "So you wouldn't mind?" she asked. "Of course not. Where is he?" Justin asked. "With Miss Everly in the sitting room," she said. "All right, I'll go get him," Justin replied before heading off. Jaden watched him for a moment, and once he was far enough away, she quickly scanned the grounds for any available Hawthorne guard. Her gaze landed on Ash. Before long, Justin returned with Tristan. Jaden offered to carry the boy as they headed toward a waiting jeep. She tossed the keys to Justin, who caught them mid-air, a satisfied grin spreading across his face. Jaden chuckled. When they reached the vehicle, she opened the rear door and carefully settled Tristan into the seat, securing the seatbelt across his small frame. "Aunt Jaden?" Tristan called softly. "Yes, Tristan," Jaden responded, amused by his whispering. "Dad said we're going to our house to pick up some things, and I can show you my old room," he said. "That's right," Jaden confirmed. "But our house isn't as big as Owen and Liam's, and my room isn't as nice as theirs either," he admitted, disappointment creeping into his tone. "Let me tell you something, Tristan. My room at the Hawthorne Sentinel camp isn't as fancy as Owen and Liam's either. Honestly, I bet your room is even better than mine. But you know what? That doesn't matter to Owen and Liam. They still like me just the same. And I bet the same applies to you," Jaden reassured him. Tristan gave her a searching look. "Do you think so, Aunt Jaden?" he probed in a small voice. "Of course, and guess what? I don't mind either. Maybe when you're feeling better, I'll invite you and the twins to summer camp. After a full day of trekking through the woods, swimming in the lake, gathering around a campfire, and racing through the fields playing capture the flag, you'll be so exhausted that even a simple, sturdy bunk will feel like the best thing in the world," she said. "Really?" Tristan asked, thinking that sounded like a lot of fun. "Uh-huh. Believe me, after climbing, exploring, and roasting marshmallows all day, you'll be so worn out that you'll just want to crawl into bed and sleep like a rock," she added, giving him a playful tickle. Tristan giggled, and Jaden smiled before tapping the tip of his nose. Stepping back, she closed the door. Justin, having overheard their exchange, got into the driver's seat with a warm smile. But the smile faded from his face as he imagined how that conversation would have gone if Pamela had been in Jaden's place. She would have told Tristan to ask his dad for a room upgrade, making Justin feel like he wasn't doing enough. She would have instilled in Tristan the idea that status and wealth were all that mattered, ensuring he understood that they were superior to the Everleys, the Reynolds, and anyone else she deemed beneath them. He clenched his jaw. Jaden slid into the front passenger seat, adjusted the side mirror, and reclined her seat. Pulling her cap over her face, she crossed her arms. The action pulled Justin from his grim thoughts, and he let out a chuckle, "Are you all settled in?" he asked, amused. "Just drive, Justin. This is your hometown after all," she muttered. "Dad, can we make our special pancakes for Aunt Jaden when we get home?" Tristan asked eagerly. "We'll see, buddy," Justin replied as he started the engine and pulled onto the road. "Aunt Jaden, you're going to love them. It's the best in the world." "Okay, maybe not as good as Missy. Jonas's pancakes, but still pretty decent," Tristan continued. "Whoa, pretty decent is all my legendary pancakes get now?" Justin asked in mock offense. "Son, you wound me deeply." Tristan burst into laughter, and Jaden chuckled as Justin drove away from the ranch. Jaden made sure to position herself at just the right angle to keep an eye on the rearview mirror. She had chosen this Jeep specifically because its tinted windows made it difficult for anyone to see inside. As they approached the intersection leading away from the ranch, Jaden's attention was drawn to a dented pickup truck falling in behind them. It was still too far to make out the license plate, but the vehicle matched the description Ash had given her. After a short drive, Justin turned onto a street that exuded an air of suburban affluence. The serene neighborhood was lined with stately homes, each featuring manicured lawns and meticulously maintained gardens. Despite the looming danger, Jaden couldn't help but note how predictable Justin's neighborhood was, something straight out of a high-end architectural magazine showcasing elite suburban homes. When Justin pulled into a low-height wrought iron compound, Jaden felt a small measure of relief. At least the property had a gate, even if security hadn't been the primary reason for its installation. He brought the car to a stop in front of the house, and Jaden scanned the exterior, mentally mapping out the best way to slip inside unnoticed, offering their stalker a false sense of invitation. The house sat on an elevated foundation, its sleek modern architecture standing in contrast to the falling snow that dusted its black and white facade. Expansive glass windows mirrored the cold, overcast sky. The front steps, now slick with ice, led up to a grand entrance partially sheltered by an overhanging balcony. Small patches of snow clung to the edges of the landscaped greenery, while the driveway had begun collecting a thin, undisturbed layer of frost. Jaden took particular note of the curved lower-level windows, perfect for maintaining a vantage point while staying out of sight. The slightly tinted glass would obscure any figures inside, making it difficult for an observer to discern movement. Her gaze shifted to the side of the house, where a narrow pathway wrapped around to the back, partially concealed by hedges now heavy with snow. It was the best route, quick, discreet, and unseen. Seeing Jaden looking out the window at the house, Justin grew a little self-conscious and asked, "I hope I get a pass at least." Jaden turned back to him with a raised eyebrow. "Are you fishing, Mr. Graham?" she quipped. Justin chuckled. "All right, let's go inside," he said, unfastening his seatbelt. As he shifted in his seat to look at Tristan, Jaden did the same, saying, "Hey, nice place, Tristan." That was when they both noticed that Tristan had fallen asleep. Justin's smile faded, reminded of how his son's energy wasn't what it used to be, especially with the medication he was on. "I'll get him," Jaden said softly. "You don't have to do that, Jaden," Justin started to say, but she was already out of the car. Opening the back door, she unhooked Tristan's seatbelt with practiced ease and gently pulled him close before lifting him into her arms. Justin stepped out of the car and walked around the front, just in time to see Jaden disappearing around the side of the house, carrying Tristan. She was clearly heading for the back entrance. He was about to call out to her, but hesitated as she vanished from view. Without wasting time, he hurried up the front porch steps, unlocked the door, and strode quickly across the living room to the kitchen, where he opened the back door. He smirked when he saw Jaden standing there, waiting. "You know, you could have just used the front door," he teased. "Yeah, I could," she replied, gesturing for him to step aside. Justin mumbled an apology and quickly moved out of the way. Jaden stepped inside, and Justin quickly locked the door. She paused, waiting, but he just smirked at her. "Showing me Tristan's room would be nice," she said, sarcasm lining her teasing tone. "Oh, of course," he said, flustered as he hurried past her. Then he stopped, turned back to close the distance between them and asked, "May I?" as he held up his hands to take his little boy from her. Jaden let him, their eyes meeting and holding for a moment as his hands brushed against hers. "I'll be right back," he rasped before leaving. Jayden smiled, her cheeks warming. She had never considered herself someone who would be even remotely attracted to a man who embodied the epitome of a geek. And yet, she couldn't make sense of it, except that he was undeniably good-looking. She could think of plenty of reasons why his personality should have put her off. He was sensitive and a bit too forthright. Maybe her reservations said more about her than him. Were those supposedly admirable qualities just things she had convinced herself a man should have less of? Was it her own cynicism that made her hesitate? As she pondered, trying to make sense of her thinking, her gaze flicked over the sleek kitchen while she walked through. White marble covered the walls, countertops, and floors, its dark veining cutting through the glossy surface. A large island with a waterfall-edge counter sat in the center, its mirrored panels reflecting the ambient light. Stainless steel appliances, double-door refrigerator, stacked ovens, and a wine cooler lined the far wall, seamlessly blending with handleless cabinets. A single green plant near the stove was the only personal touch in the otherwise pristine space. A frown furrowed her eyebrows as she thought that the place looked way too neat for a home. She left the kitchen and walked into the living room, her frown deepening at the pristine view. Much like the kitchen, the living room too looked like some five-star hotel, impersonal and soulless. The sleek white sectional sofa sat there almost new and untouched, its crisp cushions arranged perfectly. A low wooden coffee table was centered on a plush rug with a single potted plant atop it, as if any more personal touches would ruin the aesthetic. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the entire wall, offering a nice view of the garden, which felt more like a painting than reality. The golden glow of ambient lighting warmed the space, but not enough to make it feel lived in. A grand staircase with glass railings led to an upper level, where an equally immaculate seating area overlooked the main floor. Not a single stray object, not a hint of clutter, nothing to suggest that real people actually lived here. Even the dining area, with its perfectly aligned chairs and carefully arranged vase of fresh flowers, felt staged, like a showroom display rather than a place where meals were shared and laughter echoed. Jayden shook her head, thinking how terrifying it must be for a boy to grow up in an environment so devoid of warmth, a place that cultivated perfection while fostering a profound emptiness. Jayden continued to wander about the house until she discovered what she figured must be Justin's study. A smile tugged at her lips as she flipped the light switch on and peered inside. "Now this is perfection," she muttered to herself as she strode inside. The space was a perfect blend of sophistication and modern luxury. A sleek dark wood desk sat at the center, flanked by plush grey chairs and a matching ottoman. Behind it, a striking amber-hued accent wall with bold black detailing added an air of authority. Soft recessed lighting illuminated the built-in shelves where books and decorative pieces with pictures of Tristan were carefully arranged. The marble flooring, veined in black, gleamed under the subtle glow, while large windows, partially shaded, hinted at a breathtaking view beyond. When Justin found her, she was standing by the coffee-brown table with her back to the door holding a framed picture. His heart pounded as he stepped closer, daring to stand just behind her. Peering over her tall frame, he saw the photograph in her hand, a rare image of him and Tristan from one of their few fishing trips together. His chest tightened at the reminder of how happy Tristan used to be when it was just the two of them. "He looks happy here," Jayden murmured, her voice soft and low. "I believe he was," Justin replied, his voice equally quiet and husky. He placed his hands on her hips, gently pulling her back against him. To his delight, she didn't resist. Lowering his head, he pressed his lips to the curve of her neck, leaving a gentle kiss against her skin. Jayden released a shaky breath and shut her eyes as she set the frame down. She knew she should stop him. There was always the possibility that their stalker might get bold enough to break in, but the way his hands roamed over her body, exploring her as if he were discovering treasure for the first time, made her pulse race. His lips brushed over her skin in slow, lingering sweeps, and when his hand slipped beneath her top, she sucked in a breath, torn between caution and desire. His palm moved up to her chest, cupping her soft fullness as he kneaded her gently, drawing a gasp from her parted lips. "Where have you been all my life, Jaden?" he whispered against her ear as his other hand slid into her trousers, caressing her more intimately. Jaden quivered, her head falling back to rest against his chest. Justin turned her in his arms, capturing her lips with his. Before long, she was on the sturdy desk, his body nestled between her legs, his face buried between her thighs. Soon, they were stripped bare, lost in the heat of each other's touch. The room filled with the sounds of their pleasure, the enclosed space echoing their shared ecstasy. An hour and a half later, they lay curled up on the side couch, facing each other. "We should be heading back," Jaden reminded him. Justin nodded, his eyes searching hers. Leaning in, he captured her lips in a slow, searing kiss before she pulled back, offering him a warm smile. Rising to her feet, she reached for her clothes but instead slipped on his shirt before heading out. "You can use the bathroom upstairs," Justin said, his voice unusually deep. "All right," she replied. As she walked away, clad in his shirt, Justin couldn't take his eyes off her. "Damn, she's perfect," he thought with deep admiration. When she was finally out of sight, he shook his head as if snapping himself out of a trance. Then, exhaling, he got up, heading to the adjoining bathroom for a quick cleanup. After slipping back into his boxers, trousers, and white vest, he stood in the middle of the room for a moment, collecting himself before starting to gather the tools he needed. A while later, when the door to his study was pushed open, Justin looked up. Standing behind his desk, he wore an easy smile, expecting Jaden to stroll in. He was about to ask if Tristan was up when the words froze on his lips, and his smile quickly faded as his gaze settled on Benedict, casually standing in the doorway with a shotgun in hand. "Look at you, bloody traitor," Benedict sneered. "So Ethan is your buddy now? I guess what they say about bad company corrupting good manners is true. Look at you, the harmless, gullible Justin Graham, the ever-smiling church boy, denying Pam her son." His voice dripped with pure hatred. Justin didn't even have a chance to respond before Benedict pulled the trigger. On reflex, he lunged away, scrambling across the floor behind his desk. Heart hammering, he frantically patted his chest and stomach, expecting to find a wound. But he felt nothing. "You're going to die here, Justin," Benedict said, his tone disturbingly calm and cold. Another shot rang out, then another, each pull of the shotgun's trigger sending destruction through the room. Wood splintered, shards flying in every direction, feathers from shredded pillows scattered through the air, glass from framed pictures shattered, raining down like jagged confetti. "God, please let Jaden get away with my son," Justin prayed, thinking this was the end for him. Early on, Jaden left Justin's office and ascended the stairs, easily locating the master bedroom. As she walked down the wide hallway, she noticed a console table adorned with tall twin vases framing a large framed photograph. Expecting a family portrait, she was instead met with an image of Pamela Anderson in a pom-pom cheerleader outfit, likely from her high school days. Jaden couldn't stifle her laughter. "This is insane," she muttered. The fact that Justin had married someone like that was deeply unsettling. Still chuckling, she continued down the hall and reached the door. Upon opening it, her assumption was confirmed. The expansive room was undoubtedly the master bedroom. One entire wall was made of tempered glass, completely uncovered by drapes. Jaden raised an eyebrow. That's got to be some kinky shit. A growing sense of urgency pushed her forward. She found the bathroom, cleaned up quickly, and dressed before heading back out. Pausing at the doorway, curiosity led her toward the glass wall. The view overlooked the front lawn and several neighboring houses. Directly below, she spotted the small garden she had passed earlier. From this height, it looked different, almost like a work of art. Pam might be a self-absorbed lunatic, but she has decent taste in decor and landscaping. Jaden was about to turn away when movement caught her eye. A man in a trench coat was strolling into the compound. One hand remained tucked inside the coat, and the telltale bulge at his side made it clear he was carrying a weapon. She immediately pulled out her phone and fired off a text. Slipping it back into her pocket, she drew her own weapon and hurried out of the room. The house's layout presented a problem. The staircase ascended directly from the living room, making it impossible to descend without being spotted. The intruder was approaching the front door. That meant her only option was speed. She needed to get to the study and warn Justin before the man made it inside. Jayden sprinted out of the room, racing down the hallway through the smaller family room and toward the top of the stairs. She paused briefly, checking if the intruder had reached the door. Spotting him ascending the porch steps, she bolted down the staircase. "Aunt Jayden?" Tristan's voice rang out from the top of the stairs, freezing her in place. "Why are you running?" he asked, his confusion evident. Jayden, who had just reached the stairs landing, heard the distinct sound of locks being tampered with. Panic surged through her as she spun around and charged back up the stairs. She hadn't realized how long the staircase truly was until that moment. Her pulse pounded against her ribs as she skipped steps, pushing herself upward as fast as possible. She barely reached Tristan before the front door creaked open. Jayden used one hand to cover Tristan's mouth, lifted him and dropped to the floor, positioning her body beneath him to cushion his landing. Rolling them both away from the edge of the balcony, her chest heaved as her heart pounded violently. She could hear the heavy thudding of footsteps now. He was inside the house. Fearing Tristan might make a sound and give away their position, she swiftly turned him to face her, keeping her hand firmly over his mouth. She gestured for silence, and he nodded, his tear-filled eyes glistening as he began to sob quietly. A sudden burst of gunfire echoed through the house. With each pull of the trigger, Tristan flinched, his body jerking with terror. Jayden was torn. She had a duty to protect Tristan, to keep him safe. But downstairs, Justin, perhaps the only man she had ever truly cared for, was in danger. She felt Tristan's mouth move against her palm. Shifting her position, she lifted him and carried him to his room, ensuring they remained out of sight. Only after securing the door did she remove her hand. The boy's voice was barely above a whisper, but his words hit her like a blow. "Please save my dad, Auntie Jayden." It nearly broke her. Jayden pressed a kiss to his forehead, pulling him into a tight embrace. As she drew back, she met his gaze. "Is there somewhere you can hide?" she asked in a whisper. "My closet?" Tristan whispered back. "No," Jayden said firmly, lifting Tristan and carrying him into the bathroom. She placed him in the bathtub and handed him her phone. "If you don't hear from me in the next 10 minutes, call this number," she instructed, showing him how to do it as she set the timer. "You'll come back for me, right?" Tristan asked, his body trembling, his voice unsteady. "Damn right I will," Jayden replied, giving his nose a gentle tap. She drew the shower curtain closed and hurried out. Jayden rushed downstairs, the muffled sound of a voice mixing with the deafening blasts echoing through the house. The intruder had no hesitation, no fear of consequence. His confidence was staggering. Reaching the study door, she heard the man taunting, "Come out, kitty, kitty," his voice laced with amusement. "Your desk won't hold up to more than 2 more blasts, and then it's bye-bye, you spineless fool." "Spineless?" Justin's voice rang out, filled with fury. "Spineless is what you call a man who brings a shotgun to take down a so-called church mouse. Huh, Benny? Spineless is what you call a man who spent his whole damn life sucking up to Papa Dearest just to secure his retirement. You want spineless, you buffoon. Spineless is a woman who spent decades lying to a man that 3 bastards were his sons." Benedict roared with rage and fired again, shot after shot, until the unmistakable click of an empty magazine filled the room. Jayden didn't hesitate. She peered inside and saw him fumbling to reload. Slipping through the doorway, she whistled sharply to startle him. Benedict spun around, his bloodshot eyes wild with fury. He snapped his shotgun closed, ready to fire, but before he could pull the trigger, Jayden launched into a cartwheel, landing just in front of him. She kicked the gun from his grasp, then followed up with a powerful strike to his face, sending him staggering backward. His rage only grew. Abandoning his weapon, he charged at her like a brute, fists clenched. Jayden sidestepped swiftly and raised her hands, positioning herself for a fight. Benedict lunged again. This time, Jayden let him throw a few wild punches before she retaliated, striking fast, jabs to his face, his chest, blow after blow, unrelenting. His movement slowed, his body faltering under the onslaught. With a final punch to his throat, he collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. Jayden drew a knife. Her back was now to the door, and Benedict faced Justin's desk. She pressed the blade to his throat. There was one rule they drilled into every agent at Hawthorne Sentinel. A persistent enemy is always a threat. She was ready to end it when she felt something hard press against the back of her head. "Let him go," a cold, menacing voice ordered, "or the sheriff and his boys will be scraping your brains off the floor." Jaden didn't move. "You think I'm bluffing?" the voice growled, the gun cocking behind her skull. "You screwed up thinking he was alone." Jaden's voice remained calm, unaffected. "I guess we both made that mistake then." "What the fuck does that mean?" he thundered. Justin peeked out from his hiding spot and saw one of Benedict's younger brothers holding a gun to Jaden's head. Without hesitation, he rose from his cover. Hey, it's me you want. She has no quarrel with you. Let her go," he growled, stepping out from behind the ruined desk with his hands raised. "Get back, Justin," Jaden shouted. "I can't." His voice was raw, almost a snarl. "Come on, baby, I can't watch you die." "How touching," the man sneered, shifting his aim toward Justin. "I'm in love with you, Jaden," Justin said, bracing himself for the bullet he expected to follow. "I said get back," Jaden roared. Justin shook his head, but just beyond her, he caught movement. Ash had appeared at the entrance. There was barely a second to react before Ash drove a knife into the nape of the man's neck, forcing the blade through until the tip pierced his throat. Blood bubbled from the man's mouth as he choked. The gun slipped from his grip as he collapsed to the floor. Almost simultaneously, Jaden slashed Benedict's throat and shoved him aside, watching as his body fell face down. Ash casually surveyed the scene. "I know people who can get bloodstains out of rugs, couches, walls," he remarked, glancing around the office. Justin gaped at him. "Too soon?" Ash quipped. Justin couldn't believe he was cracking jokes. When he turned to Jaden, he found her watching him. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice detached, emotionless. He nodded, studying her face. Jaden turned to Ash and grinned. "When I tell you to back off and take cover, and you blatantly ignore that order while I'm trying to protect you," Jaden started. "I'm sorry," Justin cut in quickly. Jaden paused, momentarily at a loss for words. She hadn't expected him to admit his mistake so easily. But then again, this was Justin Graham. Shaking her head, she turned to Ash. "Thanks, partner. I could kiss you right now," she said, relief washing over her. "Please don't. I'm saving myself for my future wife," Ash replied, scrunching his face in mock disgust. Jaden arched an eyebrow at him. Just to mess with him, she stepped closer, grabbed his jaw, and planted a quick kiss at the corner of his lips. "Thanks, bud," she said with a smirk. Ash gently pushed her away as if swatting off an insect. Jaden shook her head and smacked the back of his head playfully. "I need to get Tristan," she said. The mention of his son's name snapped Justin out of his daze. He met Ash's gaze, and the younger man simply shrugged. "It's the eyes. For some reason, girls dig that," Ash said. Justin chuckled despite himself, shaking his head at Ash's complete lack of seriousness. Pushing aside his own thoughts, he forced himself to move, knowing Tristan must be terrified. By the time he reached the living room, Jaden was already coming down the stairs with Tristan. "Dad!" Tristan called out, his voice thick with relief. "I'm fine," Justin reassured him. The moment Jaden reached him, Tristan threw his arms around Justin's neck. Justin held him close, one hand wrapped securely around his small frame, the other carefully cradling the back of his head. Then, his gaze found Jaden's. She still seemed detached. He wished he could read her mind. He wished he could hold her. Justin didn't believe for a second that she could kill a man and feel nothing. Was that why she looked like this? Or was it because of what he had told her? "I can't take it back, it's how I feel," Justin said suddenly, his voice low and pleading. Jaden's heart tightened with emotion. "I'm not asking you to," she said, her tone devoid of emotion. "I'm just doing my job right now." Justin nodded. He could respect that. He just hoped that, when the time was right, she would talk to him about it. "We need to call the sheriff," Justin said, turning toward Ash. "Done," Ash replied, sounding almost bored. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Andrew was in the living room with the others when his phone rang. He retrieved it from the inner pocket of his jacket and glanced at the screen. It was Ash. Just as he answered with a quick, "Hello?" another call tried to come through. The sheriff. Sensing trouble, Andrew got up and left the room. Charles followed closely behind. "Yes, Ash?" Andrew said into the phone. "Benedict and one of his brothers are dead," Ash informed him. "Whoa!" Andrew exclaimed. "What the hell happened?" "They ambushed Justin," Ash replied.